Yes, sir. Listen in. Yep. Voice to text. They should beat the man that did that one. All righty, let's take a look at the headlines. No, we are running out of order here. It's 38 degrees, going to get up to 52 today, but we are going to have some nasty weather. All right, let's take a look at the headlines. The headlines: last Republican on Westchester legislature to register as a Democrat. Who can believe that? But why not? It's the way the world works right now. A former employee, or rather two former employees of a new Rochelle car dealership ran a $1 million scheme. Why can't I be wrong about some of these prognostications? No decision had been made by a Bronx DA on whether to indict a New City father in twins' hot car deaths. Legal action and threats entangled the Hampshire Project Review in Mamaroneck. And you're going to love this story, that is if you don't like the new bail law. A man accused of beating his girlfriend. We suggest you check it out on News 12. Please, we don't usually encourage people to go to competitors, but we get stories from them. We give them attribution, but they did great work on this one. A man accused of beating his girlfriend at work appears in court. This guy beat her, kicked her, took a knife. He didn't use it. And, he's not in jail or anything like that, even though he beat her senseless right on TV. Guess why he's not in jail? He showed up in court as if he wrote a bad check for $10. I'm not kidding you. Check it out on News 12. Take a look at it and ask yourself why that person doesn't belong behind bars. I got a bridge in Brooklyn where I grew up, I can tell you. A lot going on with the Knicks. They got a new president. They had a comeback win. The Met deal is off. All kinds of stuff going on. The Met deal is off. Cone is out of the picture. All right, but first let's get to the weather, and the weather's important. Trust me, it's going to be nasty. Today, and this forecast was just updated, this will be one of the most all-over-the-place weather days that we have seen in quite some time. This morning, clouds and fog with periods of moderate to heavy rain. This afternoon, showers and rain may end as a few wet snowflakes far north and west. Breaks of sunshine, but as soon as we dry out, the temperature is going to get up to the mid-50s, but then temperatures will drop precipitously. Did I get that word out? Tonight it'll be dry with a few passing clouds, still rather windy, gusts up to 30, maybe 40 miles an hour, getting down to 26. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy with highs around 37. Chances for an afternoon flurry, wind out of the west, 10 to 20 miles an hour. Tomorrow night, partly cloudy, lows around 24. Sunday, mostly cloudy with scattered rain or snow showers. The high will be 39 degrees. And the weather, as always, is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. All right, let's get to those top stories. And again, I'm going to go first with the one that annoyed me the most. Why not doing that? I talked a little bit about it as we opened up. A man accused of beating up his girlfriend while at work in Harriman appeared before a judge for the first time on Thursday. This in News 12. Please go to News 12 and check out the video. In fact, I'd love to put a link to it on my website. Jazz Vasquez Paulino didn't comment on the 4 charges against him, but did take a moment to stop and apologize for his actions as he left Harriman Village Court. How many men do you know, if you're listening, and I'm talking to women out there who have been victimized, is they give you a fresh one, they beat you up, they humiliate you, they beat you, and then, oh, I'm so sorry, and then they do it again tomorrow night. Anyway, News 12 caught up with the remorseful Jay Vasquez Paulino outside of the Harriman Village Court night where he went before a judge. That was Thursday night, facing 4 charges, that's last night, in connection to the attack that happened at his now former place of work. The assault that took place was captured on surveillance video. Again, we ask you to take a look at it. What he was doing with a 12-inch kitchen knife, though. Anyway, in court, he asked for a public defender. The judge reminded him that there's an order of protection ordering him to stay 500 feet away from the woman he is charged with attacking. Now, he was arrested following the incident, but was released because of the state's new bail law. I'm going to say something horrible. This should happen to Heasty's wife or daughter. And I don't mean this literally, but he should think about it if it was his wife or daughter, and see if he wants this guy on the street. And I don't want to be doing a story in 2 days, and it won't surprise me if he attacks this woman again. All righty, let's move on, folks. Just, for every time Trump does something that's out of the ordinary, the left equals it, the far left. That's why it's going to be, instead of the president getting booted out of office by votes come November, this is why he's going to be reelected. All right. I got that off my chest. A mixture of news, and this is because I'm not guided by any, as long as I admit what's an opinion, we're fine. Now, this is news, straight up. That was news with commentary, okay? Let's get to the news. The only remaining Republican member of the Westchester County Legislature will switch his registration to the Democratic Party on Friday. Legislator David Tubiello, David Tubiello said he's changing now so that he could meet a February 4 deadline to be able to vote in the Democratic presidential primary. He said, I'm not trying to demonize Republicans. I'm just saying I feel more comfortable at the moment with the Democratic Party. Well, I guess that's what the last man off the Titanic said too, but what does that do to our two-party system? He said he hasn't decided which of the candidates he'll vote for, but knows he won't be voting for President Donald Trump. This is tough having a one-party system. It's not healthy, folks. All righty. Now, one day I do want to try and get car dealerships. In fact, I hope the car dealerships who are willing to say, no, we're honest, will want to be on our air, and we can call them that. But we criticize them a lot here. So these kinds of stories, or this next story, is always fun. 2 former employees of a used car dealership in New Rochelle are accused of running a $1 million scheme. This in Low HUD this morning. While employed by New Rochelle Hyundai, James Castellano and Israel Villoria illegally sold vehicles owned by the dealership through Global Auto Sales, a car dealership owned in part by Villoria, and kept the proceeds from the sales. They perpetrated this scheme by listing in New Rochelle Hyundai's records details of cars that were not owned by Hyundai, which made business funds available for the purchase of these vehicles through Hyundai's bank, J.P. Morgan Chase. Anyway, the cash flowed into New Rochelle Hyundai accounts helped to cover up, that is the cash flow, the actual theft of vehicles. This went on from September 16 to July of 17. And in addition, Mr. Castellano is charged with stealing an additional $300,000 by depositing checks made payable to New Rochelle Hyundai into his personal bank account. He also failed to pay taxes on the money. That's interesting. When you steal money, you got to pay taxes on it, folks. Both men were arraigned in Westchester County Court on 2 counts of second-degree grand larceny and first-degree scheme to defraud. Castellano faces additional charges that include 20 counts of first-degree falsifying business records and second-degree grand larceny. This is a touching story. Still, people have different opinions about it, but it is still in limbo. This in News 12. The New City father accused of leaving his 1-year-old twins to die in a hot car in July appeared in court Thursday morning. Juan Rodriguez, 39, told police he thought he dropped his infants off at daycare before heading to work. You know the story already. Prosecutors announced Thursday that there is still no grand jury action in the case. He's due back in court on April 2nd. Wow. That's a tough one. A continuous proposal to develop housing at Hampshire County Club in Marrone has already resulted in 1 lawsuit, and more legal actions could be looming. This in Low HUD this morning. Hampshire Recreation LLC is turning to the courts to compel the village board, that is the planning board, to push ahead with a process that would determine whether the development team, I'm stuttering here, that would determine whether the development team, led by Dan Pfeiffer, can build 105 single-family homes on part of the club's golf course. Hampshire filed a lawsuit in state Supreme Court in November, claiming the planning board is illegally refusing to accept its final environmental impact statement. Now, there are a number of things going on we want to share with you as we head towards 7 o'clock. We have learned that as we speak, there is a passenger ship docking in Bayonne that has people from Chinese nationals who some have the virus, and they will be quarantined there. But they are now looking at different quarantine sites in former or existing military facilities where they can send people to be quarantined. One of them, by the way, is in New Jersey, and the other is not far from where I grew up, in Fort Hamilton in Brooklyn. So that's what we know right now. Now, this is a sad story, folks. The Chinese doctor who tried to issue the first warning about the deadly new coronavirus in Wuhan, only to be reprimanded and silenced by police, has died of the illness. The death of 34-year-old Li Wenliang was announced by Wuhan Central Hospital officials, who said on a Chinese social media platform that they deeply mourn his passing. Now, I'm going to cut to the chase with this guy, and people in China are upset, and they're right to be upset. Hasn't happened here in America yet, but they're right to be upset because essentially the government kept calling it a hoax and fake news. Sound familiar? Okay, this next story will make national news. It certainly makes regional news, and it's right here in our backyard. Hide your hacksaws, says the New York Post, but this is in every outlet this morning. The lovelorn seamstress who helped two killers break out of a maximum security lockup but chickened out of plans to join them on the run was released from the prison Thursday after more than 4 years. Joyce Tilley's her nickname. Mitchell, known as the Shawshank, for her role in the underground escape, walked out of the Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women, according to the State Department of Corrections. She did so about 8:30 a.m. yesterday. She had been denied parole 3 times, but was granted a conditional release for good behavior that got her sprung before the June 2022 expiration of her 7-year sentence. It was unclear where Mitchell, 55, went following her release. And I don't know, I thought she should have done more time when you release people, but at least she did some time. Too bad she didn't do that during the new bail law. She probably would have been still walking around. Yeah, I'm critical of it. They blew it. Come on, far left French. You blew it. You blew it. A triumphant President Trump on Thursday ripped the probes that have bogged down his first 3 years in office, saying it was, I can't even repeat. He went into a tirade and all that kind of stuff. And but he did vow to get his enemies as we look forward. Now, I did these stories out of order, and you will forgive me. A high-ranking judge has publicly blasted the state's controversial bail reform law Thursday, calling for immediate rollbacks to protect people from possibly dangerous defendants being put back on the streets. Quote, it is my opinion that without significant changes, the current legislation will not only be a missed opportunity for a long overdue criminal justice reform, but also a significant threat to public safety. So said Bronx Criminal Court Supervising Judge George Grasso. Good for him. He said in the brief, we should stop the charade. Wholesale removal of judicial discretion is dangerous and unprecedented. We're going to go straight to some sports right now because it is important. Dolan wasted no time hiring an agent. They got another agent. What's going on in sports? Everybody says this is a great deal. At 8 o'clock today when we talk sports, it ought to be very interesting. Leon Rose, one of the most powerful agents in the NBA, with a client roster that included the biggest stars and some of the top coaches, will become the Knicks' next president. Here's my opinion, folks, and one of the, it's a problem, but also one of the nice things, I guess, about the NBA. If you can get 2 or 3 superstars, screw the rest of it, you can win. So instead of figuring out how to play better basketball or draft better, what they do now in basketball is, well, let's get the agent who knows these guys, who can get them paid. Doesn't matter if he knows basketball. And he's right. Systems aren't a big deal. Defense isn't a big deal. Talent, extreme elite talent wins the day. So this guy's not an executive. He's I don't know. He's like a basketball pimp, you might say, but a good one, And I mean that in the best of ways. But all righty, where are we going here? The Islanders won. They beat the Kings 5-3. The Devils won last night. The Mets are back in the news, and it ain't good. This man, Mr. Cohen, who wants to buy the team, said, hey, I got to take over. And one of the Wilpons, again, the curse of if the Knicks have Dolan, the Mets have the Wilpons. And they want to still run the team even after they sell it. They want a big role and have 20% of the team. Please. You know, I've always liked them, the Mets, but I want to thank them for sending me to the Bronx. Oh, man. It's too bad I love sports because this is just nuts. By the way, to give you an idea of some of the people, this guy, Leon Rose, I want to go back to the basketball story for a second. If you're a basketball fan, you'll understand it better than I. LeBron James, Rich Paul, William Wesley, Carmelo Anthony, Eddie Curry, Allen Iverson, Chris Paul. These are the people that he reps, just to name a few. So he'll bring a few of them to New York, and that'll solve it. Doesn't matter if he knows anything else about basketball. I guess that's a good thing. It works. But it's just that we have this idea of what a general manager does and how a general manager does sports. Get over it, folks. It is 7 o'clock. Let me see. Anything else not working today? All righty. I promised something that we're going to have to wait until Monday because of all the construction and the problems we've had getting the show rolling today, and may well have into the next week. Don't worry. We'll figure out a way to solve it if the construction is going to continue. We do believe we have a few hours today of a break. Kirk Douglas died at the age of 103. And wow, what a life, 103 years old. And he slept with, I think he slept with the actual Hollywood Hill, every beautiful actress. But then he settled down with his wife of 60 years. Thanks. Those are great movies. Yes, I love Spartacus too and a lot of others. Listen to this one. Bernie Madoff wants to get off the hook. That's right. He's going to die, he says, in 2 years because of kidney disease. So he wants to get out on, a hardship case. Please, please keep this man breaking rocks. Either that, or if he wants to get out, put him in an auditorium, no security, with 1,000 of the people whose lives he ruined, and then you're out of jail, no problem. Have fun. You're cool. Speaking of that, Mr. Rose, that is Pete Rose, not the new Leon Rose, who will manage the New York Knickerbockers. Pete Rose wants a new chance to be reinstated into baseball. Now, I still don't think he should be reinstated to baseball, but I do believe he should be allowed in the Hall of Fame. He's saying that what he did is less serious than what people did with PEDs and what people did with PEDs, rather, and what people did with the recent scandal regarding sign stealing. I disagree, and anyone who is listening who either grew up in a mobbed-up neighborhood or who has gambled through a bookmaker knows exactly what I'm talking about. And that is that it sullies the game, it goes outside, it involves organized crime when you gamble. Now, it's not so much that he threw a ball game. But once he makes a bet with the bookmaker, every bookmaker on the planet finds out that Pete Rose bet on his own team. And it sullies the game, and it makes it very easy for people to do things illegal. Now, with the salaries they make, it isn't as common anymore. But no, he needs to say, he knows the gambling, what the consequences were. He needs to stay out of baseball, but he doesn't need to stay out of the Hall of Fame. It has to do with business and integrity in the sense that, hey, we can't have the mob involved, although they had been for many years. And I don't know about you, but there was a piece, and Vince will get to you in a moment. There was a piece in the paper the other day. Look, I can have, as many who listen to this program for years knows, that I can have a very salty sense of humor. And given the time of day and the show and the guest type, I can go right out there to the envelope. But I don't like anything, absolutely anything that denigrates women or if they inadvertently denigrate themselves. And I have a mixed feeling about this story because it involves strippers. And to my view, a stripper has every right, so long as she's doing it legally, to go out and strip and make a living. Especially if we're going to empower women, they should have a right to do that, even if other women don't like it. And so I understand that. But anyone who saw, there was a piece in the Post the other day where these men that kind of fostered it, and they were having a party, and I'm no prude, but they literally threw thousands and thousands, mostly singles, of course, thousands of dollars. In fact, the floor was literally, this hallway that they showed was carpeted with it. And women were stripping, and when they're stripping, they were well stripped, I should say. And again, a guy who likes the kid and admits that he loves women in the female form, that would be me. But still, this kind of, I found it, and if the women didn't, I guess that's fine. But it's humiliating that some football player or some comedian or some actor, and there were a bit of all of them there, they would bring like a box with thousands of dollars in and throw it on the floor. You know, I don't know. Anyway, it bothered me. It bothered me because I don't like people having to be subordinated or humiliated. And maybe the women were all in on it. I don't know. Certainly the money was there. But that's a Super Bowl party. And to me, it was one of the Super Bowl parties that just sullied a wonderful football, or rather a sporting event. And I said to myself, I learned my lesson back in '79 when I lost my sports innocence when two Boston Bruins won in the fans and beat a fan with a shoe. And I finally realized, you know, just because they have NHL caliber major league skill doesn't make them scholars or menches, does it? All righty, we're going to take a break and get to our guests. I know we're running a little bit late. Why? After we did a test show in the middle of the night, that once again we had a problem, is beyond me. But again, we have a lot of construction going on here, so we're asking you to be patient. It's part of the whole renaissance of the train station, of which we are a part. And it is Friday, February 7th, 2020. It's 38 degrees. It's going to get nasty today. We're going to have some rain and then more rain and then some wind and rain this afternoon, maybe even with a little snow. And it's going to get up to about 55. Oh, it's getting warm. Well, get over it, because tonight it'll drop like a rock after the rain passes through. It'll be dry tonight with passing clouds, still rather windy with winds out of the west, 15 to 30 miles an hour. 26 degrees tonight. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy with highs around 37. Chances for an afternoon flurry are possible. Saturday night, partly cloudy, getting down to 24. And on Sunday, mostly cloudy, scattered rain or snow, getting up to 39, 33 at night. And as usual, the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And the 6 o'clock hour, or the half of it that we were able to do, was brought to you by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. And of course, as always, United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. We're going to talk with Vince Russo in a moment. After that, we moved him off yesterday. Remember, we were closed for 2 days for construction. They tell us there's going to be a lot more. We're going to work around that. We'll keep you informed if we have to do the show remotely or whatever. Anyway, Vince Russo at 7. Andy Spano, we moved him from Thursday to Friday to get his take on the impeachment and the debacle in Iowa. Steve Callis joins us at 7:50 for his football retrospective. Also, what's going on with the Knicks. Jake will be holding me accountable at 8 o'clock. We had Jake's picks. Jake's did a Bob's picks. He gave me about 10 hockey games the other night. I think I won 8 of 10 or 9 of 10. Al Tarantino joins us at 8:20. Dr. Victor Sternberg at 8:35. And at 9 o'clock today, District Attorney Anthony Scarpino will join us in person, and we are looking forward to that. Right now, we go to the telephone where Vince Russo is standing by. Good morning, Vince.
Hey, good morning, Bob.
You're not very. You sound like you got a frog in your throat.
Yeah, I mean, I've been sick for over a week. I'm still not over this cold.
Die. No, I'm just.
Not seem to shake it. You know, with Pete Rose, I think he should be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He legitimately earned all of those statistics that he had. He didn't do it by cheating. He didn't use drugs or anything like that. And, you know, even this business with the gambling, I think I'm correct in saying I don't think it's ever been shown that he bet against any of his teams.
Don't matter.
Well,
Two
see, I
things.
think it does.
No, two things. Let me just. I'm going to let you finish your point. One is he still hasn't fessed up to and shown any remorse for it at all, and he's denied a lot of what they know. But tell me why you don't think it does, and then I'll tell you why it does.
Well, see, I don't think it matters because if he bet for his team, he can't affect the outcome of the game. You could try and play as hard as you can. You can. It's easy to make a team lose, and it's incredibly hard to make a team win. So if he bet against the team, and he could. And I don't recall.
I got this one, folks.
At this time of the morning, whether he was a player or a manager or whatever when he was doing this.
He was a playing manager at one point, probably the last of his kind, and then a player. Okay.
So as a manager, he could have the guys, a strategy where, call a double steal where he knows they're going to get caught and create an out or whatever, so that he could throw the game in order for them to lose. But it's impossible, other than playing the game as hard as you can, to force it to win.
Allow me to retort. I think that's the proper word, or is it now? Anyway, here's the problem with that. Twofold, I think. It doesn't make me right, but number one, as we deal in a country trying to figure out, is the president doing things for his own benefit or for the country? Pete Rose faced that same conundrum when he bet on the team. There are times in Major League Baseball when your best relief pitcher, if I use him too much, his arm's going to fall off. But if I need him today to win that big bet, I compromise the team. I hurt the team. That is what changes the integrity of it. If he's only betting on his own team, if we're to believe that, that's number one. Number two, once gamblers know, and that's their network, that's how they do better odds than the people in Las Vegas. Once they know that he's betting on his own team and he's going to wear out his bullpen, or perhaps leave a starter in too long, that will affect lines down the road, and that's why.
Well, yeah, I see your point. I think that, as far as him being in the Hall of Fame, he really legitimately did what he did. Got all the hits, did everything that he was supposed to do without any interference with drugs or any of that other kind of stuff. So I think at very least he should be in the Hall of Fame.
Well, so do I. No, I'd like to separate the two. Although I think he would already be back in baseball if he would admit publicly the things that baseball knows privately. And he's refused to do that.
The problem with Pete Rose is he's a knucklehead.
Well, yeah, he's not splitting atoms in the basement.
No, he's not at all. He's a fantastic baseball player, but you're not going to run into him at the patent office. I think what annoys me more is the people who use the drugs. Mark McGwire, Roger Clemens.
See, I think they should all be in now. I think baseball has already sullied itself, and we know there are 140 players out there, 140 who they had to cut a deal with the Players Association, who they can't out, who they know did peds, and we have no idea how many of those are in the Hall of Fame. So I think they should just admit that they screwed it up, and it should go on your record. And otherwise, this very sport, which maybe this is to your point, that howls about integrity, has already sullied its integrity. They either start over with a whole new set of rules, or they just say, yeah, that's the way it was, just like in spitball days.
Well, they obviously ignored everything that was going on with PEDs because they were happy. It put people in the seats because they want to see people hitting home runs every night.
Absolutely. Vince, you know this, but I am so disappointed in the sports writers who, when Joe Torre wrote his book, they took the highlights that came out in the news, like the briefs, and they wrote about them, but they obviously didn't read the whole book. But he was very, very honest about it. He wrote about how we all knew the guys were doing peds. The owners knew. But nobody reads the freaking book.
Yeah.
Read it. Same thing. They for as much as people, and I don't particularly like Alex Rodriguez. He's kind of a knucklehead in a different way. Mm-hmm. And they thought that he hated him, but he actually writes about him and says he may be the hardest working man in baseball. whether it was
Yeah.
Peds or not, and very smart and brilliant baseball guy. But that's why if you're going to quote a book, read the damn thing, or boy, take a quote out of it if you want. But if you're going to continue writing about Peds and you don't acknowledge what was in that book, well, then how the hell? What are they paying you for?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree with that.
Hey, did you see this story about this guy? You've got, if you get a chance, go on News 12 Westchester's website. And I am really, my old boss is, no, don't send them to other outlets. No, but I have to. Because we mine their stories and we give them full attribution. And I owe them this, but they did a good job. They've got the film of this guy, V. Shows up at the place of business to get his girlfriend, beats her, kicks her. Has a 12-inch or 15-inch knife on him, beats the living daylights out of her. And guess what the new bail law did?
Let him out, of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Yeah.
I am just, anyway, betwixt and between with all of this. Hey, you see, Brooklyn and New Jersey are going to get some people with the virus. They're going to send them right to your house. See that?
Yeah, I saw that. I don't know why the State Department just doesn't put an announcement out and tell all of these transportation companies, don't put anybody from China on your boat, ship, plane, whatever it might be, because we're not letting them in.
Well,
I don't know why they don't do it.
It beats the hell out of me. Hey, this one just come across. A new gas station employee, first day he got a job. This is an ABC News. Very first day. Gets hired. All right, go out there and pump gas. He stole $17,000 on the first day. I hope he did it in New York.
Why?
Because he'll be walking the next day with all that money in his pocket.
Yeah, it's true.
Oh God, I'm just in that kind of a mood today. All right, we had, and you helped us with our test last night. And do not ask me why somehow things were a mess this morning electronically. So
I thought you sorted all your difficulties out.
We did, but construction has a way of rearing its head. I don't know if it was the construction here or whatever, but we didn't get on the air until 6:30, and I'm just beside myself about it. But at any rate, and again, we've shared it with the audience. We are undergoing some serious reconstruction here at the chain station. And overall, it's a very good thing because we're part of this whole modernization, but we may have to live through some hiccups while we do it. At the risk of getting people annoyed because we have such a jam-packed schedule, given that we were closed for 2 days, I really won't have much time to take calls unless somebody cancels. But your take on the president's tirade yesterday?
Oh, boy. It was really amateur hour. I don't know. Everybody says, you got to respect the office of the presidency. He doesn't respect it. I don't know what to say. He acts like a junior high school bully, and I guess people like that. People who support him like it. Fine. It's a shame. I mean, how he acts and the things he says, and it's I don't know. It's so unfortunate, and I think what. I said originally during this whole impeachment thing, the mistake that the Democrats made was, once they impeached him and they knew that he was never going to get convicted, it's just emboldening him. Now he feels free to do whatever he wants. Well,
now, he acted badly. There are those that will say, and with some justification, that the Speaker of the House acted with little decorum by ripping up his speech. Now, at first when I saw it, I was appalled. But the more I thought about it, well, unless you start standing up to a bully in the bully's ways, you're not going to get anywhere. So,
yeah, it's just unfortunate for the country how all of this continues.
Did you see the look?
Out.
Get the picture of it. There is a look on the last time I saw the look that William Barr had on his face. William Barr had looking at the president.
Mm-hmm.
I saw it in a porn film. It's like I tell you, they should not have pursued him with the rules that they did. They should have used a RICO statute. It's just troubling, and But then again, he's done some good things in terms of the economy and what have you, but this just can't stand. Anyway, in my view, well, what the hell do I know? Now, before you go, I did have another. Oh, yes. In fact, this kind of bothered me in a lot of ways. The doctor who tried to warn the world about the virus has himself died.
Yeah, I know, from the virus. Yeah.
But you know what? Does this sound familiar? The Chinese government was calling it fake news and a hoax.
Well, we did that with the Spanish flu in
I know.
1917.
What is it about leaders and hoaxes? God darn it. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, it's just the way it is. And now, if I may, I know you don't follow basketball. Did you see where the New York Knicks, and this is a good thing if you're in that world, they hired the number one agent in basketball as their general manager. And the Knicks fans are running in the streets making love to one another because they finally admitted that basketball is less about the system and less about coaching, although that matters some, and less about anything else other than getting superstars.
Well, maybe they felt that the guy has a good eye for talent.
No, he doesn't have an eye for talent. He has them locked up. They're his clients. Of course, he has an eye for talent.
Well, he can't be. He can't be an agent and general manager.
No, he can't. But see, here's the thing. Here's my point, and it is both a credit to their sport and a knock to it, because in every other sport where you're sweating systems and you're sweating systems and you're sweating recruits and you're sweating everything else. In that sport, all you got to do is be able to talk 3 superstars onto your team, and you're a contender.
Well, I guess that's the nature of the business. I don't know. I don't follow it. But, I think that they felt that he was a guy who, is a good judge of players, and maybe is persuasive. Maybe he can get people to play for him. And as you said, if you can get a bunch of good players to play, that's what puts people in the seats. And that's what pays the bills.
All right. And speaking of, I've got to get my guest on the line, my next guest. So you stay right there, okay? Now, I'm sorry, Vince. I'll talk to you later. Vince Russo, everybody. And let me get the former county executive. But I need to hit the button. Oh, he hung up. They always hang up just before I get it. But that's okay. If the county executive's listening, let me see if I can get him back. All right. Oh, my goodness. He'll pick up now, unless he doesn't recognize the number. Yes, Mr. County Executive, how are you? We had to call you back. A few technical glitches here and there. Folks, as we mentioned earlier, we moved the County Executive, now political analyst, Andy Spano, from yesterday to today to get his take on what's going on the planet. I almost don't know where to start, but I will start with the impeachment with the impeachment conviction. Now, we just had somebody on who was not happy about the president's behavior. But this is an open field. What was your reaction, to the, first of all, to Mr. Mitt Romney's being the only guy to vote the other way, number one. Number two, the president's reaction yesterday. And then, of course, the melee in Iowa, where we can't, how are the Democrats going to run the country if they can't even add up stuff?
Well, let's talk about the impeachment first. Now, the impeachment was a joke. I mean, the trial was a joke. Uh-huh. So let's eliminate that to begin with. Okay, let's talk about Romney. All right, very courageous. I mean, if you're someone who has been in politics, been elected to office, and been in a position like he is, to do that, that's incredible.
Yeah, I realize that. And as I said, I mentioned earlier today, it doesn't matter if you like him or hate him or think he's a traitor or whatever. What courage. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I
Absolutely.
mean, why would you take that? It gave me hope. I tell you, it was a bright spot in another otherwise more dismal situation all around. All right. I've never seen a situation like this where you obviously had a case. Okay, forget about whether guys are guilty or not. You had a case, and you bring it to trial, and they refuse to look at evidence. They refused to call anybody.
Well, but you know what?
So
But
the whole thing became a joke. Except that the Democrats made their point. And that's obvious from Romney, and it's obvious from a number of the other Republican senators who didn't have the guillons, to do what Romney did. It's unfortunate.
Well, but to be fair, the founding fathers let it be that the Senate could set rules and not make it a regular trial. In other words,
Listen to me. That's fine. Yeah, I understand. They didn't go outside the rules. I understand. But that's not the point. See, you fall into the same trap everyone falls in. They try to be logic with this administration.
Oh, of course I do.
There's no logic to it. There's no logic to this. This is raw, feelings.
Yep.
And emotions. That's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
And you can only do emotions with emotions.
Well,
Nancy
that's why.
Nancy Pelosi did it right. When she tore that paper up, she did it right.
Well, as one of my listeners just texted, and to be fair to him, Nancy Pelosi didn't act well either, and that's true. But one of the things that I depending on what side you're on, I never knew that being polite with a bully worked. So, good for her. What's your reaction?
It's like the guy beats you up, kicks you, maims you, everything, and then you spit at it and you say to the guy, "Fight fair."
Well, let me ask you something.
There is absolutely no evidence that those are equal actions. What he did, the speech he made, and against what she did, and she did it great. I like the last part where she put it in his back and just tore it, so it was obvious what she was doing.
That's what is.
But again, that's what it's all about, and everyone's still in the rules. That's okay. As long as they stay in the rules. No matter what you feel emotionally, as long as they stay in the rules.
Question.
Now he went out. He ostensibly went outside the rules. They had an impeachment. He got impeached. Okay, he didn't get convicted. So all right, everything's still working.
Is it though? You mentioned earlier, sir, and it jumped out from my earphones into the middle of my brain. It gave you hope. I'm losing mine about the nature of our democracy. I think it's changed, and I think unless we change something about it, I think it's changed forever. I think that we are in all that matters is wins, quote unquote, and it doesn't matter how you do it, whether you're ethical, whether you're not, and
well, you can't equate a change in the way one functions with a change in our democracy. Okay?
Well,
just because he functions that way, we have a constitution. You have to function within the bounds of the Constitution. And so far, that has happened.
I'm not so sure. I don't.
Well,
I'm going to go back to the Mueller report, who in my view, missed his historic opportunity to make a difference in this country. If anyone took the time to read that whole report, he should have been impeached for obstruction of justice then. Again, I'm not saying he should have been convicted, but he, again, the obtuse language, well, there are other means. Why don't you just come out and say we couldn't exonerate him, but the Congress, but impeachment exists. He could have used that word to pursue those charges. Instead, a man I admired turned out to be a chicken hawk.
Yeah, so. But they had a hearing. He did his presentation. He gave his report. They didn't follow through on it. They didn't impeach him. So nothing got to this. When something gets to the Supreme Court, they make a decision, or to a court, and they give an order, and then it is not followed by the President of the United States, then we're in trouble.
Do you know? Well, we are in trouble. A man that I know you probably admired. You worked for him. You worked when he was governor. You knew him well. Said on, well, not these microphones, but when I was on OX, Governor Mario Cuomo, I used to have him on semi-regularly. And he said, and I quote, when I asked him about whether or not the Supreme Court was political, he said, Bush, I'm sorry, I'm losing my train of thought here. Bush, not Biden. Oh, God, come on. The other, Bush Gore. Next question, Bob. That was exactly how the governor put it.
Next. Well, I say it worked. I use that as an example. That in any other country, if that had happened, we would have had a revolution in the streets.
Well, how come we don't have...
person...
Yeah, but this isn't... I'm sorry to stop you. I'm just playing, you know, like you're pain in the ass here.
I understand.
You see, here's my point. I am disappointed. Democrats would do the same thing? I don't know. And if they did, I would say the same about them. Only 3 or 4 Republicans were willing to say that this act actually happened, even though it's right in front of our faces. I mean, what we're talking about here is a failure to follow your very oath. That's what I'm talking about. We have what we now know, and the Democrats are doing it locally with this stupid bail law, the far left. What we have is a system that can allow one party to hijack the whole government because the other party's been deemed as the enemy. That's what's failing.
We shall see.
Well, I hope not. You know.
We shall. No. Wait a minute. You have a guy. Let's look at this. I think about this all the time. That's why I did. So I'm giving you some of my thinking on it. And it may be wild and so on.
No, please.
But you have a guy that was not a Republican, who has captured the Republican Party and turned the functioning of the party and the government to his personality, character, and so on. All right? And we think that there are some serious flaws in his character and the way he does it. We do. There are 40% of the country, the electorate doesn't. What makes you think in the next election we can't get somebody in who is very different and does not follow the precepts of any party and does what he wants, but he does it in a different way that makes the country better? Why do you think we can't get that?
I don't preclude it, but I certainly know
that
if we get one of the far left folks, who want to tear down the borders, not punish kids that beat up their coaches in school like we just saw in Newark, and get rid of all testing and continue to criticize, as they do in New York City, pursuits of excellence and commitment to doing well. I don't want to vote for those people either. Yeah, if we get Michael Bloomberg, I'd be a very happy man.
The thing is, look, you got one last shot here.
Yeah.
At least this year, and that's the election.
Yes.
Okay, you got one last shot. How do you know there aren't secret Mitt Romneys out there?
Well, they better start showing their...
But remember, suppose that the Senate vote had been a closed vote, not an open vote. Do you think the numbers would have been different?
Yes, but isn't that a shame that we have... No, you see, I know I'm a Pollyanna, and I got called out by one of my investors the other day. I would like to think that if you take a sacred oath, that you'd at least... I understand politics, but there are just points in time where you got to cast it aside. You just have to. And
where do you live? You live in... Yes, that's true. Yes, that's true, and there are many, by the way, people who would do that, okay? How about the 3 Democrats who now have really given themselves a real problem in the next election?
You know, this is like an argument.
How about those 3?
I agree. See, this is like an argument I have with my guests sometimes, or my callers. I'm throwing the president under the bus because he's the president right now. But if the Democrats, in fact, as one of my callers said, Barack Obama was big on those executive orders too. He just did it more civilly. But if those three Democrats, I feel the same way about them. I feel the same way about the extreme left in our party, in your party rather.
No, I'm talking about the three Democrats who voted
to quit. Yeah.
To convict. Yeah. Yeah. How about them? That took a lot of courage. But there were three of them. At least they had each other, and they were in a bunch there. Well, Romney stands out because he was alone.
See,
he was historic.
I was less concerned about convicting the president than I was about allowing witnesses. I thought that because they had no good reason to do that other than political. All right, let's move on to a couple of other things. No, I'm sorry.
No, by the way, this is going to come back to haunt them. But he can do a lot of damage between now and Election Day. And then we'll see if he ever loses whether he leaves. That's another problem. Anyway.
But just the fact that you say that, just the fact that there's a huge part of this country that doesn't know if he'll leave. Now, that brings me to my next question before we move on to other things, local, etc. Do you believe that the president will change his behavior over the next few months?
Absolutely not.
I was hoping.
There's no change behavior. Look. I believe that when he got into office. I believe that when he was running, when he gets into office, he'll change his behavior. I believe that in the early years that he would see with this and that, and he'd see he could get a lot more done changing his behavior. Because he could have gotten a lot of this done a lot easier. Mm-hmm. He really enjoys this. Part of his being. Part of his personality.
Okay, I'm going to get human.
He doesn't like it when things are not messed up.
I got to get human with you, where I'm just still Pollyanna in a good way. When the president, I said, all right, he won. I thought it was crazy. But you know what? When he gives his State of the Union speech, I want to see if he tries to bring us together. Because I like that. And I love Ronald Reagan for that. No. And at every turn, when I'm hoping that he will say something inclusive for all Americans, he doesn't. And I'm very disappointed, even brokenhearted on some level over that. I'm very sensitive to rejection.
So why not just you have your opinion of him? You know how he is. Stop talking about him.
I do this for a living. Andy Spano, our guest, delightfully chronologically.
I mean, that's right. Stop talking about him.
All right, I'm going to move on.
He gets his jollies from you talking about him.
I hate you. You're telling a political talk show host to stop talking about the president. Jake, would you shoot me?
Yeah, the thing is, you look at this. You look at something. You say, what is the minimum thing I can do to really, get this guy? And right now, the thing that I can do is unelect him.
No, I understand. Okay, now, here's this other question. I had one more here. Now, this is tough for you, but fortunately, you're not running for office. What is it about the 40, and it was up to 49% the other day, his approval rating. What is it about the 40% of Americans that will vote for him if he throws babies into volcanoes?
Well, they're not new. They've been there for a long time. They've been out there in different parts, in different pieces, and they never got together. Given the way we communicate today, and given a person who tried to put them together, and no one tried to take a minority and keep it the next. Everyone tries to get in and create a bigger majority for themselves when they go to the next election. He didn't care. He was really smart.
Yeah.
Let me keep my 40%. He didn't go after more than 40%. That's all he wanted.
He is a lot smarter than people think. So there I was the other day, after he gave Rush Limbaugh, who deserves an award for free speech because he told every lie in the book and did it greatly. He's a great broadcaster. When he gave him the presidential freedom, I climbed up to one of the tallest buildings here in New Rochelle. But it was but you know why I didn't jump? Do you know why I didn't jump?
Why?
It was the Trump Tower.
Why?
It was the Trump Tower. Look at this. Maybe I should do it here. Chronologically.
Hey, it was theater the other night.
It was very good, actually.
I watched the whole speech.
It was
and
great.
I don't know if it's from my education background and so on, because I always try to teach this. I never get bored of anything. I watch it with a perspective that see where I'm going to learn something, see what they're doing, and so on, or like even say, boy, how can we put something so horrible on?
But it was brilliant.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. It was brilliant.
I mean,
brilliant in a way that sent me through the roof, but it was brilliant.
Goebbels didn't do
It was a show.
Goebbels didn't do as good a job when they in Munich, for God's sakes.
Yeah,
it was
no,
brilliant.
He's got an intuitive feel for the masses, and that's very dangerous because we know of other people who have had that.
Yeah, but anyway, all right. I promised you I'd move on. This is my therapy session. It's 7:39. Now, did you see here? I
want you to calm down.
Calm down. But again, there I was, ready to leap, and I looked at the sign on the building. Yeah, I'm on the Trump Tower, for God's sakes. I can't get away. I can't. I was driving on the Huts the other day. There was a Trump golf course. He's haunting me. He's following me down the Huts. Anyway, but again, I could spend, and it troubles people, I could spend a whole nother hour on the AOCs of this world too, and they'll have their day in my court. It is 7:40. We're talking with Andy Spano.
But I see the AOCs very differently. See, the AOCs, they're not going to control the party. Okay, they're going to do what happened in the '60s. They're going to. Bernie's not going to be our candidate. When it's not September. Well, yeah, this is even later that I predicted Trump would win. I predict Bloomberg wins.
Well, okay. So do I. And I actually wrote him a letter. This is the true story. I wrote him a letter, and I said if he'll employ me between now and the campaign, I'll have someone else do the show. I'll go dark and work for him because I feel it's no, I do. I feel it's a national.
Well, he just opened his headquarters in New York State. So,
yeah, and he's opening one in Westchester on Sunday. But you know what the interesting thing? You know what it's really interesting? Now, he's a guy I happen to know a little bit from when I was a speechwriter. And he is brilliant, and he's the real deal. But again, one of the problems, and you've seen this in your job, you know how cult of personality works. I admire the daylights out of him, and he'll do a good job. But you ain't lived till you worked with some of his arrogant assholes. Oh, my God. I've always said that I love Michael Bloomberg, but whenever I have to work with the people that work for him, I showered afterwards. Smarmy, elitist a-holes. And so it just, but still, it's like I'm a proctologist. I have to decide which a-hole I'm going to work on today. All right, I'll move on. I know I use language that but I do. I'm a big fan of Michael.
No, that's okay. I've heard the language before.
No, I'm allowed to do it on this. You should have said a-hole, not ass. But
Did
anyway.
you look up? By the way, speaking of language, did you look up cockamamie?
No, I've heard of that. Yeah, I did look it up. There's something. I also looked up chronological, and it doesn't sound anything like chronological at all. Not even a tiny little bit. All right, did you? You know what's pretty funny? I'm sure you saw it in the news. Tubiello jumped off the Titanic. Laughed man off the ship. Did you see that?
Yeah, I did.
I
did.
I understand why he did it. In fact, we have I don't know if you know him. We have a wonderful councilman here. In fact, he's on at 8:20 today. He's a moderate Republican, very good at his job, Al Tarantino. He is going to be Mr. Republican in Westchester soon. But he really is very good, and the only reason he'll never run for mayor here is he has a wonderful business and investments, and it just wouldn't fit for him, because one of the things that does happen, as much as they criticize the weak form of government for mayors and such, like Noam Bramson here, they're all crazy busy jobs, and their prime business gets destroyed. I mean, we had a wonderful Republican here 30 years ago, Len Paduano, who was a cartographer. His business died when he was mayor. So anyway,
I knew Lenny. I know.
Yeah, wonderful guy.
Well.
Wonderful guy. Great heart. And he was a cartographer whose business just went to hell. All righty, as we move forward, where are we headed with the Republican Party in New York? Because apropos of that, we need two parties. We need to hold one another accountable.
Well, look. We've had sweeps where the party has just practically been a non-entity, and it comes back. It comes back. I don't know whether that'll happen again, but it comes back because there's an action, a reaction, and a synthesis. And that's what I say. It's like the stock market. Goes up, goes down, goes up, goes down. And the parties also, they come in, they come out. Look at all these states. It used to be Democratic, now they're Republican. It used to be Republican, and they're Democratic, and so on and so forth.
You don't let this,
it happens.
You don't let this get to you, do you? You don't let this get to you. You can roll with these punches. You can watch these things on. I used to be dispassionate. I used to be clinical. But
yeah.
Well, I don't know what went
No,
wrong.
I'm not dispassionate. I'm just passionate when I talk to you.
Oh,
because I'm a pundit here.
That's right. Well, thank you, your punditness.
I mean, how would it be if I got on and all I did was rail against people? Who would listen to you anymore?
Well, that's true. Well, you know who does a little bit? A guy who's gone a little south, and I love the guy, but he is Mike Edelman, whom you know. Michael.
Yeah.
Michael's gone round the bend. Trump is driving him crazier than he'll ever drive me, because I'll give Trump credit for, actually Michael will too, for things he has done that work and understand why he exists. But Michael's gone round the bend. Michael's, it's affected his golf game.
Do you know that Michael and I did a show together?
Yes, I do. And one of my favorite callers, actually is a good friend too, calls him Triple Bogey because he likes to golf. And he even accepts the nickname. He's got thick skin. I says, my callers don't like you, He goes, I know. They call you Triple Bogey, 745. Hey, a word test for you. I'm going to pretend that I'm teaching verbal pronunciation. Can you say chromosome?
Chromosome? Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because anything with the chron in it, like chronic chronology, I know you have trouble with. All right, so we lose.
Listen to me. I have trouble with a lot of words.
Yeah, so we're learning.
Most of the time, it's remembering them.
Me too. Don't you hate it when you get older and a guy you've known all your life, his face is right there, or her face is right there, and you can't remember their name, and it turns out it was mom.
Well, I like the fact that what you do is you say to them, hey, how's your son? How's your daughter? The one in Harvard, because you're trying to buy time to remember the name.
Start saying, hey, how you doing, brother? They don't know when I say brother, it's because I forgot your damn name.
No, they know. They know.
Oh, they do. You don't know my name. And then there's always some wise ass that says, you don't know my name, do you? And you want to just put your fingers in his throat. All right.
To be serious a minute, though, these are very different times. And I think there is a danger, to our democracy, from where I personally think the president and other things that are happening is a danger to the world. We're laughing and everything here, and we got a possible pandemic approaching.
Yes, we do. And by the way, did you see the guy?
And everything you hear about China taking care of it and getting on it is all bullshit.
Yeah, in fact, you know what they did? They actually, the president used that word yesterday. You were acting very presidential.
Yeah, but he wasn't on this kind of show.
No, but did you hear
what they did? He was in the White House.
Did you hear what they did to the guy that he passed away yesterday? The doctor that tried to out it.
Yes.
His
died.
Government. Does this sound familiar? They called it fake news and a hoax.
Yeah, and they made him sign something in December that he was spreading false news. They made him sign something.
Well, that's kind of like what they should have done was withhold his pay until he had a public announcement.
That's if they pay him.
Well,
the thing that like those hospitals they're building there.
Yeah.
In Wuhan.
Mm-hmm.
Those ain't hospitals.
No, what they are is kind of like factories with beds in them. What do you say?
Well, they cleared. They put a pad down, and then brought in containers. And that's a place where people will die.
Yeah,
That's what they are.
Yeah, it's going to be a mortuary. It really is, Mr. Spano. You're absolutely right. Anyway, I probably owe you a check for this therapy session, and I really appreciate it. Now, one more thing, since come on, we got to throw, and you're an election guy now. You're on, what in God's freaking name happened in Iowa? How are they going to run a country if they can't get the vote?
Yeah. First of all, some idiot ran that. I mean, they broke every. When you do a new technology fix to an operation, especially an election operation, you've got to dot every I, cross every T, check everything out and everything before you approve the method. How can you approve personal cell phones as the mechanism for reporting? With that app. I mean, that's ridiculous. That violates. So there's you got to look for some idiot in Iowa that approved that method. That's all there is to it. Now, you did the same thing, though. You said, look at the Democratic Party. Well, that's not the Democratic Party. That's Iowa.
Now, whoever you hire, but whoever you hire, you got to take. You're the boss. You were the chief executive of this county. If your geek screwed up, Spano did it.
Who hired him? I'm telling you, the Iowa Democratic Party hired him.
Well, yes.
Not the National Democratic Party, not the candidates, not the whole kit and caboodle. I mean, I know what we go through here when we approve something here, and we make mistakes sometimes. But I'm telling you, we have an independent check on it, we have a state check on it, and we have an internal check on it. And then we have all the public people who come in and say, well, three of us are wrong. Well, so,
I want to meet
I
this
don't know
guy.
what went on there.
I want to meet this guy or gal. Put him in a room. Count 1, 2, 3, 57, 31.
It is an embarrassment, and it gives. The problem with all this and the way it plays out, the fighting between the Democrats and Republicans and all that, is that it forms a sense of defeat and in the people of the United States. They don't trust their government, et cetera, and what's going on. And meanwhile, in the reality, we are the best government in the entire world, the most functional government in the entire world.
Tell me that doesn't scare you.
And we don't think we are.
Well, that's
probably all this crap.
That's probably good to be a little humble. Let me leave you with this. Do you remember the old honeymooners? When the episode when Norton sleepwalks and the doctor gives him sodium pentothal to get the truth serum, and he says count backwards from 100, and he says 99, 98, 3. Andy Spano, former county executive, political pundit. I know we try to take the light side of this today, and I actually do appreciate it. Thank you very, very much. And
you're okay. Talk to you next week.
All right, take care. All right, it's time for sports. We have to put Jake in the seat of honor for a number of reasons. We're going to get Steve Callis on the line as well. Why, you say? Why? Well, come on. Here we go. Okay, folks. Steve, get in the seat of honor. Jake has a number of jobs today. One is to hold me accountable. One is, I was just calling him, and then he called me. Damn it. This is not working. All right, he should be there now. We're going to ask him to hold. Steve Callis is going to join us. I have to give a weather report. Now, remember, folks, what's cool about this is, for a change, Jake is going to be holding me accountable. That's right. He's holding me accountable for things that I've done. For example, the other day, I picked about 10 hockey games, and I think I won about 8 of them. as also. So it's going to be Jake's Picks of the Week transferred to Bob's Picks of the Week. Steve Callis, he let us know early he wants to talk about Pete Rose. Of course, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl. We're going to talk about the Knicks finally got a general manager. But what did they do? They went out and got an agent, proving my point about basketball. It really is about getting 2 or 3 superstars and then punt. To hell with coaches and everything else. It's a canard, a prevarication, a falsehood, a lie. And that's the word. That's your test today. We're going to put the lights on Jake now so you can look at him while we get ready to do the weather. The weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Let me fix that. It's located right here in New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses. So visit uhgc.com. It's 40 degrees. It's going to get up to 55 today. It's going to feel warm, but we're going to have rain this morning, more rain this afternoon, maybe have a few wet snowflakes before it gives way tonight to temperatures down in the 20s, and it will be dry. However, around 7 o'clock today, we may actually have winds in the 55 to 60 mile an hour range. So if you still have any Christmas decorations up or lawn furniture, you may want to get it in. Saturday, a partly sunny day and breezy with highs around 37. Chances for an afternoon flurry. But since we'll get down to 24, you may actually see a few flakes floating around. But Sunday, mostly cloudy, scattered rain or snow showers. The high will be 39. Any snow that's around will have melted, if it even amounts to anything at all. And as we get into this, the bottom of the hour is brought to you by Aging Issues Management, plug-in virtual reality in the law firm of Payne and Con. Our sports segment, as always, our sports segment, I should say. My tongue is swollen today. By the way, I slept. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days, and without further ado, as we get rolling, we like to include him in all our fun and games here. Please welcome, you know him from his own podcast. You know him as the editor of the sports, the sports part, the editor of sports for the Westchester County Post.com. He's on the Philly Fanatic Radio. He's been on ESPN. He does a lot of stuff. Please welcome Steve Callis. Good morning, Stephen.
Morning, Bob. Great to be with you and Jake, as always.
Yeah, I'm tongue-tied today. I don't know what it is. But first, we need to say hello to Jake. Do you see how handsome he looks? Look at that. Look at that. Look at my man, Jake. There, look at that. Look at that.
Can you see Steve?
Yeah,
I got dressed up for you.
Yeah, do you see, Steve? He's a model for Halloween decorations as well. All right, well, we have to, Steve, we did something the other day. Jake decided to get even with me. We're going to talk about the Super Bowl in a moment. But the other day, Jake tried to get even with me by having me make hockey picks. How did I win? Did I win 8 out of the 10? How many did I win?
You did 12. You picked 12 games.
Yeah.
You went 7-5.
7-5? Which 5 did I lose? I lost some? Which ones?
You lost the Devils.
Oh, that overtime goal, that stinking guy.
The Devils, the Sabres, the Jets.
What, the Jets?
The Flames.
Who did the Jets play?
And the Oilers.
Who did the Jets play?
I don't have that written.
Oh, but I missed the spread. I missed the spread.
We didn't do spreads. So 7-5 is decent, I guess, but you were 1-4 in your underdog picks, which is really, really pathetic. Anyone could pick the Patriots, beating the Jets
pathetic?
with no point spread.
Is that nice?
Come on, that's pretty bad.
7-5.
I don't know, Bob. Bob, if you go 7-5 every night
with no point spread,
hockey,
yeah,
you'll be all right.
No, but we didn't use any point spreads or odds.
No. I think
we just did it straight up.
With the spreads, I probably won because I did my own thing. I thought it was like 10-2, to be honest with you. But hey, all right, listen. Before we get into the other stuff we want to chit chat about, and you could do that again to me, Jake. It's only fair that you get a chance to hold me
accountable. And then maybe I'll take your picks and throw a couple bucks into an account. And
okay,
see
no, because I'm pretty good at this. I think if you look at the spreads, I used the spreads. I was like 10-2.
Oh, come on.
With the spreads. But you know what? We're going to keep careful, Rick. This was a tease, folks. Starting next week, we will, in fact, you could do it today if you want, find the lines. We will hold me strictly accountable, and I will eat humble pie and buy Jake lunch if I don't have a winning record. All right, let's go to the Super Bowl. The only reason we didn't have you on earlier, Steve, is we have construction going on here at the train station. So we had to close down for a couple of days because they're knocking down everything literally on the other side of the wall here. So,
wow.
You would have been.
Tanel, who's my boss, called me and told me the whole story, but I'm sure you're going to make it up to her because she has a lot of stuff to talk about, as you know.
Oh, I know. I'm going to give her own spot earlier in the week to make it up. Of course, I'm going to make it up. Do you think I want to? There's nothing worse than a woman scorned. You know that. It's awful. I'm not going to piss her off. Sorry.
Goodness gracious.
Oh, my goodness. No. She's getting her own spot because she actually has some interesting stuff to talk about with this doctor that she deals with. So we're going to give her a longer a dedicated segment early in the week, Tuesday, Wednesday,
awesome.
I think I have it. So, all right, let's get to you. Jake already was in about the Super Bowl. What was your take?
My take was kind of the way I thought it might go, that the Chiefs had the ability to come back, and the 49ers, in my opinion, really didn't. I thought it would be a little higher scoring, but I thought the Chiefs would win and cover, only because, they've got Patrick Mahomes and nobody else does. And I think he's been unbelievable. On the defensive side of the ball, and we spoke about him last week, I'll point to Chris Jones, who actually deflected 3 passes in that game, 2 very late in the game that were big plays. And I thought the 49ers were a better team. We talked about this on the air with both of you guys last week. But the Chiefs have Patrick Mahomes, and nobody else has him, and that's going to be a problem for the rest of the league, I think, if they can keep the team together. If he wants $40 million a year, whatever you think of Tom Brady, the beauty of Brady is he always took $10-12 million less than he was worth, and that would give them another 2-3 players. And if that doesn't happen with the Chiefs, Chris Jones is a free agent, for example. Are they going to pay him? I don't know. And that's the problem for the Chiefs going forward, in my opinion.
Well, you know what they never talk about anymore, and I'm asking this of you and Jake. Remember back in the day when ball players, they made decent money, but and when I say ball players in the generic, they used to look forward to World Series shares. And what do these players get when they win the Super Bowl? Do they get an extra $100,000?
Yeah, I think it was $124,000. I heard that number on ESPN per person.
Peanuts. Eat them.
Correct.
Now,
that's why the Patriots have been able to have a dynasty. Brady never got greedy.
Well, I guess not. Well, hopefully he was paid well.
But now he is.
Well, he should be. He's got a right to earn all these other guys making all this money. Another question apropos of Mr. Mahomes and the MVP. Do you think he deserved the MVP of the Super Bowl? B, did you see where the team elected a different guy as the team's MVP for the year?
I did not see the latter. I think he was the MVP. You could have made a case for Damian Williams. You could rarely make a case for a defensive player. But, the Williams 38-yard run at the end of the game, while it was the clincher, that put him over 100 yards. So I don't think – I would still give it to Mahomes because at the end of the day, he's the one everybody looks at in the huddle, and he's the one who drives them down the field, and he's the one who made a bunch of plays. So I'd still give it to Mahomes. Who did the team vote, Bob? I didn't even hear that.
I think it was Williams. I had the story here, and I don't know where the heck I buried it in the 2 days. But I think it's interesting that the team did not make Mahomes their MVP. Jake, were you aware of that? Or did I dig up something you guys didn't have?
I think I did hear that. I thought Mahomes was mediocre. I thought he was probably the worst Super Bowl MVP performance I've ever seen, and I think the running back should have gotten the MVP easily.
Okay, what about?
Well, he was mediocre for 3 quarters and 5 or 6 minutes, but very few quarterbacks can drive the team down the field twice against the defense like the 49ers in the fourth quarter to win the game. That game probably would have been 24-20, and then the Williams run after the fact. It's not unlike Marcus Allen in that Super Bowl years ago, running for like 120 yards in the second half when the game was over, and he got the MVP.
I'm very proud of myself. Just hold it right there, and people can see the face I'm making. Last night, to try and keep up with you guys, I went on this thing called Pluto, and they have this football channel, right? And they had the 10 best runs of all time, and they had that Marcus Allen run where he reversed field.
Yes.
That was incredible. But they had another one.
Was it Super Bowl runs or just
Super Bowl
runs?
runs. There was some guy Lynch, Deshaun Lynch.
Marshawn
Lynch.
Marshawn Lynch.
I thought there was one when he shook off 5 tackles. I have dreams about doing that. I don't know. I have dreams about doing it just in life. And then they also had the Riggins one, where he was just such a big monster, people bounced off him.
Yes.
Did any backs ever play till they were in their mid-30s, or is it just too much?
Running backs are like tires. You only have so many, so much tread.
I love that. Anyway,
serious.
you guys are getting me into football more than I mean, I used to be into it, like I said, 60 years ago in the old Kansas City Chief Raiders games. So as we put a wrap on the Super Bowl, then how would you rate it overall, gentlemen?
The game
Super
itself?
Bowl? Yeah.
I was fascinated by it. I thought the 49ers should have fired their coach at halftime. Never. But
For not trying to score, you mean?
Yes, I don't think he realized that he was in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs.
Jake's hard, man. Jake's hard.
I will say this, Bob. I went to that Super Bowl Atlanta against the Patriots because of my son, and it wasn't totally Kyle Shanahan's fault, but it was mostly Kyle Shanahan's fault to me being at the game because, again, Julio Jones made an incredible catch on like the 22-yard line. Late in the game, they were up 7. If he took 3 knees, if he ran the ball into the line 3 times, Matt Bryant would have had a 40-yard field goal to put him up 10 with like 2 minutes left. And that was the ball game. Instead, he decided to throw it. And then Matt Ryan took the dumbest sack of all time. And then somebody got a holding penalty, and they were out of field goal range. They had to punt. Brady leads them down the field. They score a touchdown to tie. And then they win the coin flip, the Patriots, and Brady leads them down the field to score a touchdown. They win the Super Bowl. So he's got some baggage now, Super Bowl baggage, including what Jake was talking about, because he could have called timeout with 1:47 left in the half and still had 2 timeouts. That's an eternity, and he decided not to do it for whatever reason.
Wow. All righty then. So your final take on this Super Bowl, and I'm asking Steve that.
My final take is it was a very good game. Jake's totally right. Everybody's going to put in the video of the first 3 quarters and 5 minutes of that game to see how can we shut down Patrick Mahomes, which I didn't think they could do. And the answer, of course, is they didn't do it for the whole game, but they did do it for 3+ quarters. It's kind of like the Patriots can hold Mahomes in a half, and then he scores 30 points in the second half. So it's coming. You just don't know when. And in the Super Bowl, it came in like the last 7 or 8 minutes of the game.
You know what? He's kind of like a virus that mutates and adapts to the game by the fourth quarter. My guest on the phone is Steve Callis, and of course, this is the segment where Jake holds court. Jake Schaefer, our sports guy, our handicapper. I want you to start polishing up your sports skills because podhockey.com is going to start up soon, and it looks like Bobby Hull will be our first guest. So. You stay sharp for that, Mr. Callis. Let's move on. We're going to go to the Knicks yet. We got plenty of time, I say, for you gentlemen today. The Knicks, and this, I'm going to start with a nasty take, and you guys can carry the ball after that. I am pleased for the Knicks, but also it firms up my conviction that basketball is the one sport, it's all about the stars. They hired arguably the sport's best agent to be their GM because he knows a lot of top guys. But and it just bothers me because it's no longer about how can we play the game. It's let's just get the biggest 2 or 3 stars and we have a team. They did it down in Florida. They did it in Cleveland. They did it in L.A. And now they're doing it in the Knicks. Have at me and that notion. Well, who is Leon Rose and why do we give a spit? Jake.
He's
Steve.
A super agent. He's got a lot of heavy-duty clients, and this guy, he's close with Worldwide Wes, an influencer, whatever that means.
Yeah, I know he's a part of CAA, and
I just think he's friends with all the really big basketball
That's
players,
what he is.
LeBron James, Chris Paul's. It was interesting to see that Calipari is a client of his. I wonder if he would ever consider coming to the NBA.
Where's he play?
Calipari's the Kentucky coach.
Oh,
John Calipari.
Oh, Calipari. I'm sorry. I thought you said Cal Perry. That's something you guys do upstate. Is that the way you do it? Cal Perry. Cal Perry, old boy down there in Kentucky, going to come on up and straighten out these here Knicks.
But
what about you,
problem
Steve?
with the Knicks is Dolan. I don't think anyone really wants to be associated with Dolan.
All he's got to do is what he does with hockey. Let them do their thing.
He doesn't. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know why his strategy is so different with the NBA.
The Rangers are a system away or a real defenseman away from being a contender because they did it the right way. He did let the basketball. Although, is there such a thing in basketball? Maybe he has done it the right way. Maybe this whole notion, as they do in every other sport, which is to rebuild, maybe it doesn't really exist in basketball. Maybe you just go get a Leon Rose and get top stars. Steven?
Well, I don't know if they're going to get the top stars to come to New York even with him. Unfortunately, the Garden might still be the Mecca in theory, but the Knicks haven't been good in forever now. And you're right about basketball, though, Bob. It's not even like hockey. You've only got 5 guys on the court, but if you can get those 2 superstars who are going to play 35, 37, 40 minutes, you can dominate. Now I think you almost need 3, although certainly 2 going back to Jordan and Pippen, even back then, Kobe and Shaq.
Or Rose and down in Florida, Rose and, God, I can't think, LeBron. Who are the Florida guys that made it all work?
The Heat.
Bosh, LeBron, and Wade.
Yeah, that was ridiculous.
Yeah, and that was a big 2 3/4, I'd say. But I don't know, because they're so far away, the Knicks. If you could put, and look at the Nets, if you can put Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving on the same team and they're healthy, we're going to find out if that's going to work next year. In theory, on paper, that should be a championship contender. Except Kyrie gets hurt every other week, and you just don't know what Durant, early 30s, coming back from his injury is going to be. But you do need those kinds of guys. And clearly, because Kyrie was from New Jersey and was a Nets fan, that seemed to be the deciding factor. And somehow he got Durant to come with him. And, of course, Durant is the bigger piece of the puzzle. I don't know if that's going to happen in New York. I think Leon Rose, Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, isn't he Zion Williamson's agent? So are we talking about 4 or 5 years from now when maybe he'll come to New York, assuming he stays healthy, because he's got a body, great player, is killing it already, but he's got a body that to me screams out for injury, and he's already missed 30 games or whatever he missed this year, 20 games, I don't know what it is. But I think it's very, very hard in basketball, and you're right, Bob, you have to start with at least 2 superstars, and in the case of Chris Bosh, I'd say 2.5 or 2 3/4 superstars
2 3/4
to really get on the board now.
You really do. Gentlemen, what about this trade the Knicks made? I don't know enough about it, but people were saying it's a good trade for them. They got rid of this guy that didn't want to be here, who was their best player. What do you know about that, Stephen?
Well, Marcus Morris, he's a good player, and now he's on a contender. I think they got a first-round draft pick out of it, but it'll be, a low at the end of the first-round draft pick. But I guess they weren't going to sign him. The Knicks did sign a lot of one-year guys, and maybe Leon Rose can work some magic with that.
Because they have a lot of money. They have a lot of money. They got a lot of cap.
They have a lot of money, but they had a lot of money last year. And Durant said no, and Kyrie said no, and everybody else said no. The notion that they had some master plan was a joke. They finally fired Steve Mills, even though he's going to stay within the organization. But his record as a president or whatever he was is abysmal. And so look, I'm a Knicks fan for 100 years. I can remember I was a kid, but I can remember the glory days, and they've not come anywhere near that in forever.
Gentlemen.
And that's a problem. I don't know how it's going to get better. And maybe Jake is right. Maybe this guy can attract these stars to come to New York. But I'll believe it when I see it, because he's not on their side anymore. He's on the other side.
What is the problem with Dolan that he collects these, and we're going to be polite and use the right politically correct term, he collects these differently abled basketball men like Isaiah Thomas.
I really
and
thought he was
Mills.
going to go back to Isaiah.
What is it with Dolan? Does he must think he knows the sport, or at least in a technical way.
Well, if he does, he's grossly mistaken, obviously. But Bob, you pointed it out with the Rangers, with Glenn Sather, the disappearing man all those years in New York, right? At least they eventually gave him time to rebuild, and he had a bunch of rebuilds, frankly. I mean, it's not like he did great for they made the finals once. But at least when he left alone, maybe because it's hockey versus basketball, because even I'm guessing James Dolan would say, I don't really know hockey, but hey, I know basketball. And he really doesn't. But, he wrote the gigantic check for Phil Jackson. And I'll never forget Red Auerbach, when he was alive and Jackson was winning all those titles, he said, well, I built the team from nothing. I drafted Russell. I had Cousy, blah, blah, blah. And Phil Jackson never did that. And, of course, when he came to New York and tried to do it, it was a total disaster. So Red Auerbach is laughing somewhere.
Well, you know what? That's the age-old thing. When I was teaching management, I used to say, just because a guy's a good sniper doesn't make him a good general. And I think you had, in the case of Phil Jackson, a great coach who was out of his depth when he was a general manager. But see, the thing
I think he didn't care enough.
he may not have. That's a good point. Well,
But Jake, if he cared that he was going to make them a championship contender.
I don't think he put the effort in.
That's a fair statement. He's pretty.
No, but I'm asking
guy.
if he did put the effort in. You think something different would have happened? They would have been
Probably
championship
not.
contenders if he tried.
Probably not, but I just remember Jackson not going on the road and
Right.
kind of sticking
He
his
was
head
in
in the sand.
Montana or wherever.
Flying out to see his ex-wife who ran another team, or his current wife or girlfriend, whatever status that she may have had. And the thing about how, where I, not that I disagree, but just a little sliver here. For 10 years, the Rangers were contenders. They got to the finals twice, the conference finals a couple of times.
Yeah.
They won.
No, you're right.
They built a successful franchise. They were probably a player away from winning a cup. And you know what? As great as Lundqvist is, when all the money was on the table, he didn't do it. So, and now look at this team that they built. But okay, and that's not because I like hockey. It just has to do with Dolan more than anything. I want to move on to something that you expressed interest in and that Jake and I talk about often, and it's in the papers again. Pete Rose wants another shot.
Well, I just specifically, I heard you talking earlier about you believe he should be in the Hall of Fame as opposed to back in baseball, and I totally agree with you. Here's the problem that everybody misses. I've written a ton of Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame columns, but here's what I want to point you to. There's a book called Pete Rose, An American Dilemma by Kostya Kennedy, who used to write for Sports Illustrated. And believe it or not, in a footnote, I think the most important thing in this whole book is in the footnote on page 229. You'll recall, and Jake must know about it, you know, when they had the famous press conference when Pete Rose got banned for life.
Yeah.
And I'm going to read you the quote in the book. When asked at the press conference announcing Pete Rose's ban from baseball whether the expulsion would have any bearing on the Hall of Fame, Giamatti had dismissed the idea, saying he saw no place for intervention. And here's a Giamatti quote. "You," Giamatti said, addressing the baseball writers in attendance, "will decide whether he belongs in the Hall of Fame." So because Giamatti died 9 days later, as you know, and because Fay Vincent, number 2 and best friend to Giamatti, who became commissioner, thought in essence that Pete Rose had killed Giamatti, they just blackballed the guy for the rest of his life. And every commissioner, Bud Selig, Rob Manfred, every one of them punted on this issue. And I've written a number of articles where all you have to do is read the title. Why won't Rob Manfred listen to what Bart Giamatti said? It doesn't matter what I say or you say. But Giamatti on that day said the writers will determine whether Pete Rose would be in the Hall of Fame. The reason they came up with the Pete Rose rule, at least that's what I called it, and a lot of people in New York called it at the time, was to keep Pete Rose out of the Hall of Fame. Yet Bart Giamatti, everyone forgets this, Bart Giamatti said, no, this has nothing to do with the Hall of Fame, you the writers, and you know in 91, 5 years after he got out of baseball, he was so popular, that's why they put in the Pete Rose rule. He easily would have been elected way back when. I'm not a Pete Rose fan. I'm a fan of his as a ball player. He's a jerk. We all know that. But he should have been in the Hall of Fame many years ago.
I agree.
And I would just point to that footnote.
Isn't there some, and you may be more familiar with this, you know, you read so much over the years, but isn't there an aspect of this, something that he did do that he will not admit to, perhaps even betting against or betting on other teams? I know there's some aspect there that has Major League Baseball has their knickers in a twist over. What is that?
I've never heard that he bet against his team.
Well, I don't think he bet against.
See, the Rule 21, which says, you know, a year if you're betting on somebody else, lifetime if you're betting on a game you're involved in. To me, there should be a split win there. If I bet on my team to win, to me, that's much different than betting on my team to lose.
I had this debate earlier with Russo, and my point is, and again, growing up in a mobbed-up neighborhood where there was a lot of gambling, is, man, when you're betting on your own team, You may keep a starter in too long. You may go to a relief pitcher who 2 days later, when he has to come back on the mound, that affects a line 2 days later.
I understand that, Bob, but there was never any evidence that he did any of those things. I think there was evidence that there was one pitcher, I can't remember who he wouldn't bet on his team to win because he didn't think he was any good. That's a different analysis. But I've never heard that they left a guy in too long or pulled the guy early. If you're trying to win the game because you bet on the team to win, you're trying to win the game. So I never heard. To me, there should be a split, and if you want to give him a year for betting on his team to win, or 10 years, or 20 years, or 25 years, look where we are now. It's 30 years.
No,
at some point, it has to be done and over with. And again, based on that quote, that's a Bart Giamatti quote, he should have been in the Hall of Fame many years ago.
I thoroughly agree in the Hall of Fame. And in the beginning, I didn't think so, again, because of where I grew up. See, where I grew up, you would get all this inside information. And again, ball players made less money. And it wasn't that they would throw games as such. It was for information. For example, a guy making $30,000 back in the day when it was okay. But as you well know, Stephen, athletes, all the way up to Wayne Gretzky, traders on Wall Street and athletes have something in common. They love to gamble.
Yeah.
And what they would do is wait till a ball player would get in too deep. And then they wouldn't say throw a game because the guys wouldn't do it. But they would give information on whose arm was bad, whose wife was screwing around with the catcher. And for example, in the neighborhood where I grew up, which was a Lucchese neighborhood, you couldn't bet on the Kansas City Chiefs for about 4 or 5 years. They wouldn't give you a line on it. And that's why all the wannabes and the made guys would be yelling at the TV, "That's the sports eye Stram has in his hands,"
right?
Which was a gambling sheet. So that's why I'm so again. But Jake,
I think David Stern's greatest accomplishment was kind of getting rid of that referee scandal. It should have been a much bigger.
Basketball.
Yeah,
Great
it should have been a much bigger deal. And Stern kind of swept it under the rug as well as possible.
That is a great point. Yeah.
So, gentlemen, where do we go next? What should we be keeping our eyes on? Pitchers and catchers next week.
I'm all good for baseball, man. I love baseball more than anything. Wherever you guys want to go is fine with me. Obviously, NBA, NHL, but yes, here comes baseball, and certainly I can't wait.
Did you guys see the shoulder muscles on Thor? But he looked like he had a fat belly, though.
I just can't believe that the guy, that Wilpon is keeping the Mets after all of the hoopla.
Yeah, well, they're pushing me to be a full-fledged Yankee fan right down to my toes, the way they run that organization. Really. All right, gentlemen. Jake, anything you want to hold me accountable for before we move on?
Sure. You want to do some XFL
Yeah, let's
football
do it.
picks?
We will get Al Tarantino. Don't worry, Al, if you're listening, we'll get to you. We'll run a bit late. It's worth it because if we can make a fool out of me, which is very difficult to do, you've accomplished something. Go ahead. Let's go.
It's a very
These
quick
are Marrone's
slate.
picks. Go ahead. No.
Rangers favored.
What's their favorite over who?
The Sabres. The Rangers are at home.
The Rangers are at home. What are we favored?
It's 145 to 165.
I'll take the Rangers.
Yes.
We're going to win by 2.
Steve, you want to chime in?
No, I don't. I'm just a Ranger guy. I do want to, if Bob will let me before I get off, make a couple of brief announcements.
Oh, yeah. We always end that way. Don't
I
worry.
know.
Yeah,
I want to hear the hockey stuff, though.
All right, go ahead. Yeah, no, plus he wants to be able to abuse me. Go ahead.
The next two have no line, so there must be injuries. The Maple Leafs are at home against the Ducks, no line. So take a pick.
Oh, the Maple Leafs are at home? Oh, this is tough. But you know what? I'm going to go with the Leafs. No line. Wow, that's because they have a defense that's porous.
I think their goalie is also hurt.
So that's the reason there's no
Yeah,
line.
that's the reason there's no line. But the Ducks can't get much offense going these days.
Blue Jackets are at home, no line against the Red Wings. Must be an injury.
Jackets. The Jackets are the best coached team in hockey. And Tortorella is going to be the first coach in the history of hockey to win 3 Coach of the Years this year. Go ahead. Next.
Stars are at home. They're favored 155 to 175 against the Wild.
Stars. And I hate it because I like the Wild and I like Gabby, but Gabby's the coach.
Okay. No underdog picks.
No,
that's it.
That's it today.
Short slate.
All right, so you can hold me accountable. Jake's picks have evolved to Bob's picks, but this is Jake's segment. He's holding Bob accountable, And this starts today. Last week was a warm-up. I think I was 10-2. He says I was 7-5, but one of us is wrong. It's probably me. As you know, we always thank Steve, but we remind folks, you can throw that one out. We'll start fresh, and you can hold me fully accountable as we did you, Jake. All righty, Steve Callis, he's on ESPN. I'm sure he's on The Fanatic this weekend. Steve, what else are you going to be doing?
Yeah, a few things. We just videoed and put up on WestchesterCountyPost.com the Super Bowl review, which I kind of went off for like 18 minutes on it, so I think it's a good listen. I'm going to go on with Joe Stazak tomorrow. I don't know the exact time down in Philly, but I'll put it up on Facebook, and we'll also do our podcast today, which Janelle will put up at Westchester County Post. And I would be remiss, Bob, if I didn't mention that because she wasn't on the air today, Janelle Albritton tomorrow night has a gig at the Martini Grill in Woodridge, New Jersey from 7 to 11 p.m.
Wow.
The website is Martini, just like the drink, martininj.com. It's her first time out there, but I went out there with her last week to check the place out. It looks like it's right off Route 17, not very far from the bridge. I know a lot of people don't go over the bridge, but as you know, because you've seen her, I think it would be worth it.
Oh, God, you would be shocked, folks. She sings like a bird. She looks great.
Yeah.
She's fun.
Yep. So that's tomorrow, 7 p.m. at the Martini Grill. Again, martininj.com. And I actually just got a text from Joe Stazak down in Philly who's listening to you right now, Bob, and he said, I'm going to be on the air tomorrow at 3:08, 97.5 The Fanatic.
The Fanatic. Great station.
Yeah, that's the ESPN Philly station. Just Google that, click on it, and when you see the red, just like yours, the red Listen Live button at the bottom, you'll be able to hear that. And 308 is weird, but that's how they do it down there. So I'm cool with that.
No. 308 work on terrestrial, straight terrestrial. You always come out of national news and updates and commercials about 7, 8, or 11, depends on the station. So I get that. And thank you for listening in, sir. I listen to you fairly often. I never catch the Saturday show because the other half of my life is with my grandkids down there in
well,
the
that's
Princeton
more
area,
important.
so.
You know that.
All righty. Listen, thank you very much, Jake. Great job once again. Steve Callis, thank you very much. And we got to see where our erstwhile city councilman is. Steve Callis, he is the sports editor for the Westchester County Post.com. Don't forget to listen to him tomorrow on The Fanatic. Thank you so very much, my friend.
Always a pleasure. We'll see you next week.
The pleasure's ours. All righty. Where is Al Tarantino? He'll be calling any minute. He's so busy. Sometimes these guys forget, but we're not going to let him forget. All right. What do we need to do next, Jake? Oh, I know what I need to do. We need to look at the weather, and the weather is brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's best rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. It's 42, it's raining, it's going to rain off and on throughout the day, fog with periods of moderate to heavy rain, more showers and the rain as we get into the evening, maybe even a snowflake or two, but it's going to get up to 55, so don't even think about snow. But that will be followed by high winds, as up high as 55 miles per hour. And it'll feel like, it'll be windy. But tonight, guess what? The temperature will drop like a rock, getting down to 26 or so. And wind out of the west, 15 to 30 miles an hour. It will ease, but it will be dry. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy with highs around 37 degrees. Chance for an afternoon flurry and wind. The bottom of the hour is brought to you by our friends at United Hebrew of New Rochelle, the top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhgc.com. The law firm of Pena and Kahn, Aging Issues Management, and their partners, Aging Issues Radio. Plug in virtual reality. And did we hear from, or did we not hear from Al Tarantino? Let me see if he's trying to call in, and sometimes they do that. Now, I just want to update you for what's following after Mr. Tarantino. We're going to talk with Dr. Victor Sternberg for his usual visit with us. And we, of course, will be talking about the coronavirus and some of the other things that are in the news regarding health, including an overturned law here in Westchester regarding vaping. And at 9 o'clock in person, we expect him to be showing up within the next 30 minutes or so. We will be interviewing the incumbent district attorney right here in our studio, District Attorney Anthony Scarpino, who has the endorsement of the Democratic Party. He is running against Mimi Rica. She's a TV star and a TV person. Zoom in on Jake so that his side of the split screen doesn't show your hand. I didn't realize it showed my... Does it show my hand? Jake, someone suggested I change the camera blocking. Thanks, I'm enjoying the show. All righty. I didn't see my hand up there. I should... Well, now I can't see anything because you're not there. All right, we'll cover it back up. Thank you, Janelle, who's out there. We didn't hear from Mr. Tarantino, so what we're going to do, it's 8:28. Jake, come back to the seat of, I want to ask you about a couple of things before we move on. That happens sometimes with our council members as we come up on 8:28. I had a couple of issues. I know that, did you visit our friends at Peña and Con yesterday? Did you get a chance?
I did not. They have the flu.
They had the flu?
The office has the flu.
Stay away from them. Well, they're right there in Montefiore in the hospital. As we look forward to next week, and assuming that they, because right now I don't think they're going to work. I don't see the trucks. They're not working on the bathrooms today, so we should be okay. We're going to be going out into the train station next week, assuming all things are okay. And Jake's going to be going out there with a microphone. You have a number of questions that you wanted to ask them, and I wanted to give people a sense of what was to come. What kinds of questions are you going to be asking them?
All sorts. We can do politics. We can do entertainment. We can do potpourri. Whatever you're in the mood for. You're the host.
Well, no, but again, you do a lot of good production stuff. I think what we need to find out is how they feel about both. We need to be fair about the president's speeches and about Nancy Pelosi's reactions, so we can get both sides to that. I think that that's very important. I think we should ask them, quite frankly, about how they feel about the renovations of the train station and how that's going. We do have running water in the men's room now, which we can use, so that is an uptick. But they're going to make the whole place totally renewed. But the big question here for New Rochelle residents is how do they feel about development, the pace of development, and gentrification? I think that's pretty important stuff. And another item I think we need to do is talk about the bail law. I don't know if you're aware of the story we did earlier today. A guy, and News 12, and I don't know if you were listening at the time, and we gave News 12 full credit for this. And we actually sent people to their website, which in general in media you don't do. Don't send them to somebody else, but I don't care. We'll put a link in our own if we have to. They got the camera footage of a guy showing up at his girlfriend's place of business, beating her, kicking her, wielding, or he tried to put it in his shirt, like a 15-inch knife or 10-inch knife. And the guy walked because of the new bail law. And the judge had to remind him as he sent him back home again. Now, remember, you have to spend 500 feet away from her. I wonder how many times that's been the last thing the woman ever heard out of the judge before she got killed or beat up again. This whole business of men who beat women and then they're fully teary-eyed, they can't help themselves. They need help, but they also need, sometimes what they need is a good beating or a bullet in the head because they keep doing it to the woman. And I don't know. The bail law has become a huge problem.
Well, that can be our first question. We need to form the question so it's a yes or no answer.
Well, should judges be given discretion is the question, as a revision. No one wants to see people who stole 3 packs of cigarettes from a 7-Eleven stay in jail, or even someone who's accused of fraud or some other nonviolent crime. And even if it is a violent crime, if we need more judges or we need more lawyers or we need more courts, then we should get them because the complaint is true. that poor people should not have to spend a lot extra time in jail because they can't afford bail. You follow me? So they need to work around that. But to totally say that there's a whole list of crimes for which you don't have to raise bail, and they include violent crimes, that's absurd. And it's an overreach by the far left that's going to come back to haunt them, I think. Now, did you see the story? It's a sports story too, out of New Jersey yesterday, out of Newark.
What's the story?
Okay, a high school. It's not in here though, but a high school coach broke up a fight among his players. Guess what the players did?
Beat up the coach?
They beat him up. They got that one on film too. Now, I'm wondering what my friends on the far left, who I now throw rocks at equally, or at least maybe more, at least when it comes to local issues, it's a shame. They had a rough upbringing. We have to forgive them. No, that's a crime. Okay, and you beat up the coach, that's assault. They should, if they're too young, they should go to reform school or whatever is there, or at least be suspended from school indefinitely and put in some kind of a special program. We got to stop tolerating this stuff.
Well,
And
I'd
here I
assume
am,
they
a
were
former-
suspended at least, right?
It all depends on who's in charge. I mean, if it was Carranza in New York City, he'd probably give them a cell phone and a candy bar and say you'll be back in school on Monday. At least that's my take. Now that's hyperbole and I'm being provocative because I think that we have this propensity on the right and the left that one size fits all, and it just doesn't work. Now, look, do I want these kids treated fairly? Sure. And if there's some kid with a bad background and he can be helped, we ought to help him. But to pretend that we got to let these kids back in school in 2 days. I'm going to share this story. I haven't told the story I get on this air yet, but because it's 7 or 8 years old, but I will never forget it. It wasn't New Rochelle, and I won't get into details. A superintendent, a man of color, by the way, and it's important to note, from another district, we had your classic meeting on background. So, and he forbade me to give attribution, so he will never be revealed. You can torture me, waterboard me, won't do it. But he told me the story. Oh, somebody's calling. I was wondering why that happened. We'll be right with you, caller. He told me the story of a kid on his way home from school at lunchtime. And another kid that he was in school with beat him up badly. And then he urinated on him. And the superintendent had to put that guy back in that same class 30 days later. Can't be. Can't have it. Can't work. And but that happens so much more than we know, and so we'll get to that. Let's say he was on the phone. I know we had trouble getting in, or he called later. It could be Dr. Victor Sternberg, and it's time for either. Good morning. You are on Radio Westchester. Hello?
Good morning, Bob.
Oh, it is Dr. Sternberg.
Morning.
Okay. Jake, thank you so much. Jake and I are preparing some stuff, Doc, and we just had a little meeting on the air, if you will, about stuff we're going to ask
Sure.
people in the train station. So bear with us. Dr. Victor Sternberg, folks, as you know, is with us each and every Friday at this time. Now, you know him as the longtime host on several radio stations, Politics and Your Health. And we kind of do a brief version of that for 30 minutes each and every Friday here. Dr. Sternberg is a periodontist by trade, but he is a healer by competence and profession in terms of focusing on prevention. Doctor, we're going to come right out of the box, the coronavirus. How worried should we be? What are you hearing in the ranks?
Well, in America and in the other countries that have had exposed individuals, right up till now, it has not seemed to have spread from individual to individual to the degree it has in China. So I'm going to hold my fire until we see whether or not Americans and Canadians and others who brought the virus home from China, begin to infect people in their own countries. We should be worried in the sense that, these viruses mutate continually. This one seems to be moderately lethal. I think 2.5% of the people die. And I think we should worry about this because it's not the last time that we're going to be faced with an existential crisis with some kind of virus that is not amenable, unfortunately, to any of the antibiotics that we currently have. So I think we should be concerned. And one of the things I thought about before I got on the radio today is, we have a Department of Homeland Security.
Mm-hmm.
We spend billions of dollars defending ourselves from terrorists and people of that sort. There's no reason in the world we should not have a Department of Homeland Security, and we spend an equal amount of money, if not more, to have a department that can rapidly be mobilized to find a way of vaccinating and treating viral diseases, because that is more likely to cause a cataclysmic event here than an individual terrorist who might get into this country. So I think that is something we've not done. I've brought it before that we have companies that are not spending money to develop antibiotics to the degree they should because of the fact that there's no money in it for them, and so there's no incentive. But the government has to partner. This is a case where the government has a role in entering the free market to somehow help fund and reward companies that will develop vaccines and or antibiotics to protect us from a serious threat to the well-being of Americans.
Well, one can hope.
And I haven't heard any talk about that.
Did you see, Doctor, where now we have a ship that just docked this morning in Bayonne, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to send those people to some Army bases. One that has been mentioned, Fort Hamilton, which is where I grew up back in Brooklyn, and also they're looking at places in New Jersey. How do quarantines, how are they set up, and do they actually work?
Good question, Bob. I don't really have an answer to that. I have not studied that subject, and I know that we have not done much of that in this country. We have not really had the necessity to quarantine large numbers of Americans from infectious diseases. So I think we're in uncharted territory, Bob. Just think about it. These people took a cruise. The vast majority are not infected. They have lives to go back to, families to see, jobs to take, and they can't go anywhere. And this is extremely disruptive, and I'm not saying it's not necessary. I do not say it is, but just think about this in terms of the impact as it kind of enters our society. We have to do this, and I'm glad we can do this on a voluntary basis. We don't have uprising on the ship, but I am sure there'll be many people on that ship who will be very unhappy about not being able to enter their lives. So this may be the beginning of something that's very we have not dealt with in this country or the world. And I hope that this disease burns itself out, that as a certain number of people get quarantined, that it stops spreading in China. But right now it seems open-ended, Bob. And, anybody who has a belief system that how this can end, should probably go to Las Vegas and make some bets, because none of us know how this is going to end. None of us.
What do you think, speaking of politics being one of your favorite subjects, what do you think of the fact that the Chinese government eviscerated and called it a hoax and fake news, if that sounds familiar, when this young doctor tried to blow the whistle, who now himself has died, by the way? I don't know if you saw that this morning.
Well, Bob, this is a function of the autocracy that exists in China, that exists in Iran when they denied the shooting down of the plane. This is unfortunately a tool used by governments that don't like the press, that can spread information that is detrimental to their leadership.
That's happening right here in this country, Doctor.
Well, there are people who think the First Amendment is a threat to the growth of America, and I think it's a natural extension of governments that would prefer to control the news we get. And these countries, China and Iran and others, Russia, really have got control of it. And we should fight. This is one issue that I once said on the radio that I would go to the barricades for. This is a non-negotiable issue.
Well, yeah, it should be, Doctor, but it's not. We're with Dr. Victor Sternberg. Doctor, the other day, a judge finally overturned the ban. Not the ban. There was here in New York State, they tried to ban vaping, and it was overturned in court. And now I understand that was overturned. Where do you think we're headed with this vaping crisis at this point?
I don't think we have the wherewithal politically to overcome the lobbying by those who sell cigarettes or vaping devices. I really believe, Bob, just like we are, exploding the use of marijuana, I think that the forces that believe in public health above profit, I think those forces are fighting a losing battle. I've said this before. I'm not optimistic. Vaping should never have been allowed to be commercialized until we had long-term studies of the benefits and detriments of vaping. We did not have them.
That's interesting.
So, Bob, I think, there's evidence-based. Just along those lines, Bob, there was just an article that came out in the journal the other day. There has been a significant drop in opioid deaths. Nationally, it's about 4 or 5%. Some states even more. And he attributed to the following. A decrease in the number of opioid prescriptions written by the medical profession, a limitation of the FDA on the gross deliveries of large amounts of opioids to pharmacies. The town has 1,000 people and they get 5 million opioid pills, and the use of the drugs to revive people who are unfortunately overdosed. Now, Bob, this is 2020. This has been going on for 20 years, Bob. The number of people that have died is far exceeds the losses we've had in every war since the Civil War. 20 years, the government has not stopped this. So when you ask me about vaping and any attempts the government really has in controlling the public health of our society, I am, again, a pessimist. I think we'll have this conversation going forward, Bob, I'm afraid.
Well, we're with Dr. Victor Sternberg. I have another question for you before I open it up for the arrows in your quiver, sir. Now, it's actually a pop story, but it has relevance. Keith Richards announced that he quit smoking in October. Now, he's in his late 70s. He smoked all his life, had all these drug habits. Does it really make a difference at this point? When you're 79?
It may diminish his COPD, his pulmonary disease, from progressing. But at this point, the die is cast, Bob. He would have had, if he's going to get lung cancer, he's going to get lung cancer or emphysema. And the damage has been done. He's only lucky. He meets 79 years. He's not infirm. He doesn't have a severe infirmity from COPD or from cancer. So he may be one of the lucky ones that dodged a bullet. Rush Limbaugh, however, didn't dodge a bullet. He was a heavy smoker. He was a heavy cigar smoker. A man who rails against all kinds of socialism, such as Medicare for all, will benefit from. I don't know if he's receiving Medicare. Do you know if he's 65 years old yet, Bob?
Yes, he is. He is. Actually, he's 69. He's my age, sir.
So he's going to benefit from the system that he doesn't like very much.
Well, he doesn't need it. He makes enormous amounts of money. What did you think?
Bottom line is,
go ahead. I'm sorry, Doctor.
Okay. Well, just remember I brought this up before, Bob, about the need for people who have a history of smoking to get low-dose CAT scans, because they will say Rush Limbaugh's stage 4 cancer probably would never have gotten to that stage had he had these scans done on a regular basis, because he was a smoker for many years. And it's an example of a failure of public health to give us a standard of care that all smokers undergo this screening, so we can treat them at a stage which involves minimal treatment versus a huge outpouring of financial involvement. And often, I think that stage 4 has about a 6% cure rate, by the way.
Wow.
That's how it is. So
It's frightening when you see that. Doctor, we read the other day, and I clipped the story, but they've come far enough along with immunology where, for example, now they know that they're getting to most blood cancers, and even leukemia, even ACL is on the target list. They may actually get there within the decade. But hard tumors, they're close, but I shouldn't say close, but they think they can also do this. What do you think? What are you reading about that? How optimistic are we for immunotherapy?
I think it is a wonderful goal. From what I understand from my reading, the number of people, except for very specific types of leukemia and the blood-borne cancers, at this point, the the evidence is that we're not close to the silver bullet.
Mm-hmm.
Despite the optimism, the silver bullet has arrived for some leukemias and lymphomas, but it has not arrived. And the trouble with these tumors that are heart tumors, the ones that are sarcomas, and they seem to have such a variance in the individual type of DNA of those tumors. It's we're struggling with that. It'll happen, Bob.
You know what's interesting?
I'm afraid.
What's interesting is
Bob?
that chemotherapy, like with I have a family relative, as you know, with leukemia, and the first few rounds it works, but then either the tumors, I don't know, you would know better than we. Do the tumors morph or do they develop a resistance?
Yeah, they mutate. They mutate. The survivors mutate. The ones that don't get killed mutate, and they become the new tumor. So you kill the ones that are vulnerable, but they're constantly changing. They're rapidly developing. So we're fighting a disease that's very tied to life.
Oh, very much so.
And it's not so simple.
It's like the very things that drive life gone haywire. It almost uses ourselves against us, doesn't it? You know, Christopher Hitchens was, as you know, a big fan of his, read most of his books, and I've had him on. But in a book I was reading recently, he called it Mortality. He actually wrote a book right up to the day he died, which is pretty interesting. But in his book, he said that his esophageal cancer was likely, although he couldn't say for sure, likely caused by he was a heavy drinker and smoker for most of his life. Wasn't an alcoholic.
Yes.
Does that contribute to esophageal cancer, do you know?
Absolutely. Esophageal cancer is very much has a higher incidence in people who smoke and drink.
Wow.
Absolutely, it is related. So it's one of those cancers that is the number of people who don't develop that cancer, who develop those cancer who are not drinking and smoking is small. You know, unfortunately, we get back to, we've had this conversation for a long time, Bob, about the fact that we don't have as much of a health care crisis because of the lack of coverage. And that's an issue for many people. But the crisis is that our inability to deal with diseases that are preventable is overwhelming the cost of our society's ability to pay for it. And just an example, esophageal cancer is, again, high fatality rate, lung cancer, high fatality rate. If there was no drinking and heavy smoking involved, the incidence of that would drop precipitously. But again, if you listen to all the candidates, it's all about how we're going to cover everybody. And we don't necessarily have proof that covering everybody is lower than it's going to give us lower cost in health care. Because the real issue is how do we keep people healthy, not how do we treat them when they're sick.
The outliers are certainly interesting, Doctor. You know, a friend of mine who shall go nameless, I don't have his permission to talk about it, but he had esophageal cancer. He's cured, by the way. He's past 5 years.
Really?
But they took out a huge piece of his esophagus so that he can't sleep lying flat, you know. He has to actually sit up when he sleeps, and they took out several other organs as a part of it.
In fact, very lucky man.
In fact, I always kid him. What we should do is get some organs that are made by a 3D machine, fill them with cocaine, go across the border and get rich. And he thinks I'm crazy, but no, wonderful man. But he didn't smoke or drink. He only drank a little wine, so he was very unlucky. But he beat it.
It's just like lung cancer, about 15 to 20% of people who get lung cancer never smoked. I mean, there is, it's all a matter. We're all playing the game of odds. You know, it's in the great word of whether it's better to be lucky or good. Sometimes it's better to be lucky.
Oh, absolutely.
And you can be very good and have bad outcomes, sadly.
My guest, of course.
By the way, getting back.
I just want to reset, if you don't mind, Doctor. Pardon me. My guest, as you know, is the longtime host of Politics in Your Health, Dr. Victor Sternberg. He's not yet doing that show here, but he will be welcome as soon as his schedule permits. But we get him for 30 minutes every week. Doctor, you were saying.
Yeah, interesting enough. I wanted to touch on, before we end this call, actually, I'm at my doctor's office. I'm about to go in for my annual wellness check because I practice what I preach. I'm outside her office here in Sleepy Hollow. When I was listening to the debate last night, I was listening to the candidates at the town hall about Medicare for all and Medicare for those who want it. And I did a little calculation. I'm a self-employed person for 45 years, and it costs me every month out of my for Medicare and my Medicare supplement and my drug supplement $700 a month for Medicare. I pay $700 a month for Medicare because I still work and I earn income, so therefore I have to pay more. In addition, I did a calculation, Bob. We have a Medicare tax. It's about 3% since 1991. Okay. I have paid over $270,000 myself in my practice in Medicare tax. Okay. Medicare tax I've paid personally in my practice, and I'm paying currently $8,400 a year for Medicare. Okay. I just want to point out, that the system of this health care where someone's going to pay for it, that somehow it's not going to come out of your paycheck. And unfortunately, self-employed individuals pay twice for everything. So, for instance, Social Security, I pay about $12,000 a year out of my practice and myself over 45 years. You do the math; it's a lot of money. So, one of the things that's as a small business person, people don't realize how much money they're already paying into a healthcare system. And then once they start receiving healthcare, as I do because I still work, I still have to pay $8,400 a year for that care. So I'm not knocking the system. I'm just being clear that let's share the real numbers. And now let's imagine a system where everyone's getting Medicare and what it's going to really cost. And we don't want to touch that issue because it has political ramifications. But it's something that requires adults in the room who are not a Democrat, not a Republican politician, to discuss how we're going to deal with the future cost of health care. And that's something we never discuss anymore.
It's a huge problem, Doctor, a huge problem. What else do you have to bring to us today? Because, I always have questions.
Well, I'm the only have to. One of the, just want to bring back to you something about immunotherapy, because one of my friends is at Sloan Kettering, Columbia Presbyterian, being treated for cancer of his leg with, and unfortunately his leg amputated. But they started him. They switched him to immunotherapy. It didn't work. He's back on traditional chemotherapy, and they were very optimistic. But again, I want to just point out to our listeners that I wish there was a magic bullet. The best magic bullet, and I'm going to leave you with this, is that take care of yourself, eat well, exercise, and don't smoke and drink if you can avoid it, because that's the best investment you can ever make in your health.
It really is. Hey, Doc, the other day I let myself get dehydrated, I was thinking about you. You would have been very upset with me. I didn't hydrate properly, and I got a dizzy spell in the middle of a hockey game. And it was one of those kind of dizzy spells that made me just drop to my knees. I knew I shouldn't take another step. And sure enough, I was dehydrated. I don't know how I did that, but I am taking a diuretic, So
yeah, that's it. Between sweating and diuretic, you got to be careful, Bob, because at this stage of life, for all of us, in which our cardiovascular systems, although yours is very well developed because you're an athlete, and the fact that you're playing hockey at this age is such a tribute to your mental and physical well-being.
Dr. Sternberg.
And I've mentioned many times in this radio show and others that there is overwhelming evidence that what you're doing with your exercise is not only going to keep you healthier, but keep those brain cells healthy and keep replacing them so you can be on the radio every week.
Yeah, I got an anecdote for you. Every once in a while, if it's early enough, I have a game on a Thursday night. And I even though I may come in here the ungodly hours to do the show, and my body may be a little tired, I'm actually sharper the morning after I play. Now, think about that. There's something about the air. But again, I'm not too worried about it. I knew I just need to hydrate a little better. But my doctor loves the fact that I still skate. I always think he's going to tell me to stop because of my age, but he says, no, you keep doing it. So,
Bob, I had a patient the other day that let's just talk about the beauty. He was a 91-year-old man. He coached tennis at Henry Hudson Public School, and he said he had to stop playing tennis. He was still an excellent player at 85, but his vision got poor. So he couldn't see the ball. He was 85 years old and playing tennis on a daily basis, and to this day he's a rigorous man. So all I can tell you is, Bob, we should both. I work out, you skate. We should do this until the good Lord takes us at 100 years old.
That's my plan, and even for a moment there when I started, I knew I was starting to black out. I actually did say to myself, well, if this is the way I'm going to go, it's the way I'm going to go. But actually it turned out to be okay. Just a little bit of, in fact.
It's the second best way in life to go, Bob. Have a great weekend.
Gee,
Bob.
what would the first one be, Dr. Sternberg? All right, thank you.
We'll leave that off the air. We'll leave it to the
take care.
imagination of
Dr.
others.
Victor Sternberg, long time. Thank you so very much. Long-time host of Politics and Your Health. We're going to take a quick break. We have to do the weather. We want to get our guest comfortable. He is with us, and we'll put him on the cameras in a moment. He is the incumbent sitting district attorney here in Westchester County, Anthony Scarpino. We welcome him here. But first, you know, we have other duties, and let's take a look at the weather. It's 40 right now, and we can even caution the DA as he drives back to his responsibilities that it's going to rain this morning. It's going to continue to rain. It's 40 degrees right now. It's going to get up, though, later today to 55, Mr. District Attorney. But don't get too encouraged because there will be high winds. It'll be raining until the early evening. Then wind gusts of 55 miles an hour. So if you left up those any of those Christmas decorations, get them down. Tonight, that weather will be followed by a cold snap, about 26 degrees tonight. It'll feel even lower. And tonight, dry with a few passing clouds. Again, 26 degrees. Tomorrow, partly sunny and breezy with highs around 37. Chances for an afternoon flurry. The wind out of the west 10 to 20 miles an hour. And on Sunday, mostly cloudy with scattered rain or snow showers. The high will be 39. The overnight low, 33 degrees. And the weather's been brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle, voted one of America's top rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. Visit uhgc.com. And as we enter our long-form interview, the 9 o'clock interview, we're supported by our friends at United Hebrew, a top-rated campus of senior care. Aging Issues Management, their subsidiary, Aging Issues Radio and Communications, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Plug-in Virtual Reality, and the doctor won't like this, but Dominic's Fine Cigars. Dominic's Fine Cigars, licensed retailer with a big selection, including Arturo Fuente, Padrons, and more. Dominic's Fine Cigars, located on Boston Post Road in Larchmont. They're open 7 days. Okay, as we enter the 9 o'clock hour, it is our privilege to have with us, and again, you're on. Oh, you're well dressed, so you're going to look good on camera, Mr. District Attorney. There he is. All right. We stream all over the place, as you know. In fact, as we reset for the 9 o'clock hour, you're listening to Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. RadioWestchester.com. You go to MyTuner Radio. We're right there. You can click on RadioWestchester.com or click on Mornings with Bob Marrone. My ugly little face is there. We're also streaming live right now on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Periscope, iTunes, and iHeartRadio. Soon we'll be on Spotify as well. And it's my privilege again, whenever we have a sitting member of elected office, it's always a privilege to have them. And in this case, he is here as a candidate. He is the incumbent. He's been in office 3+ years now, and he's running again. He did in the convention the other night. He received the endorsement of the Democratic Party. He is running against Mimi Rika, who was a former prosecutor and, of course, a commentator on MSNBC. But today we welcome, and I first met him when I interviewed him, or actually was a moderator on television some 3.5 years ago or so. Please welcome Mr. District Attorney Anthony Scarpino. Good morning, Mr. DA. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you today?
Very well. You wore the perfect colors for you. Look good up there. You look better than I do. So
I didn't realize we'd be on camera, so I'm glad I
dressed
right.
I could have always just kept it covered. Well, that's part of, in this new day and age, everybody streams, and we had to keep up with the Joneses, as it were. So I've always been, one of the things that has always amazed me, sir, is that a DA has to keep running for office and be elected. In any states, are they appointed?
Well, I think that there are, first of all, we have federal prosecutors that are appointed.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you from state to state. I believe there are some states in which we have, they have Commonwealth attorneys, and they are appointed to do the job and not elected. But as far as Westchester, it's always been an elected position, and it's, being an elected official and having to be involved in campaigns is something, that in New York we have that. Our judges are predominantly elected, although they have longer terms,
Right.
10 years or 14 years, which provides them with a certain amount of independence. But district attorneys run every 4 years. Now, I'm running in an unusual cycle because of when Judge DiFiore was elevated to
Yes.
the Court of Appeals,
Right.
it put us on a cycle, the presidential cycle. Usually the district attorneys would run here in Westchester with the county executive.
Yeah, on the off year.
And the off year.
Yeah.
So this is something that has been caused by that vacancy that was created when I ran in 2016 when we first met.
When we first met. Now, I remember 2016. Now, you had been. I want to bring people up to date on your background. Now, I know you've been a judge and a prosecutor. Take us back just a little bit. Your work in law enforcement, and then as it led to elective office and being the district attorney.
Well, I grew up in Mount Vernon, and my first, after I got out of law school, my first position was as an assistant corporation counsel in the city of Mount Vernon. Then, my career my goal had always been to try to become a special agent with the FBI. After 11 months in the Corporation Counsel, I had the opportunity to go down to Quantico, Virginia, and train to become a special agent. I spent a little over 4 years as special agent. My first assignment after Quantico was Louisville, Kentucky, and then
Home of the Redbirds. That's a minor league baseball team.
Oh, that
I have these idiosyncrasies, Mr. PA.
And then I was transferred down to southeastern Kentucky, which was Appalachia. So in Kentucky, I was working general criminal cases, bank robberies, kidnappings, extortion, corruption of public officials, civil rights violations. Then after 2 years, I was anxious to try to come back to New York. I came back, I was transferred to Manhattan, went back to my family residence in Mount Vernon.
That's nice.
And I became an intelligence officer working espionage, foreign counterintelligence. And
That had to be interesting, and I know I can only ask so many questions about that.
well, look, I know a lot of people were watching the TV show The Americans.
Yeah.
And that was the time I was working Russians. I would like to say that the TV show is very fictional
Well, of
to some
course,
degree.
yeah.
We weren't killing each other all the time or anything of that nature, far from it. It is a very different type of work. And although I did it, I preferred the criminal work because espionage is more of a game of chess.
Really is, isn't it?
Yeah, you're not
It's
making
not
arrests.
checkers. Yeah.
You're not making arrests. That's the last thing you want to do when you're working espionage because you want to first identify who the KGB agent. I was working Russians. You want to identify them. And if you arrest them and they go out of the country, then it's going to take you 5-10 years to figure out who's the new replacement. So your job is either to identify them, flip them if you can, or feed them false information. So that's the nature of it. And for me, I was young and I had done criminal work and I really enjoyed the criminal work but I was sort of cubbyholed in that and I did a good job. I spent a lot of time in Brighton Beach, but I was not a Russian speaker.
Okay. Oh, okay. Well, that had a.
So-
Brighton Beach. I grew up not far from there, so that's now a huge Russian and, of course, Ukrainian stronghold.
Well, it was growing there.
Growing there
That's
for a while,
why
yeah.
we spent. And if you remember, under Jimmy Carter,
Yes.
there had been the ability for Soviet Jewish emigres to come into the United
Yes,
States.
absolutely.
And so during that time, we were trying to interview them because, of course, the Russians were not just sending Soviet Jewish emigres. They were sending KGB
They were sending
agents,
KGB along with them.
GRU, which are military intelligence. They were sending black marketeers, people with mental disorders, anybody they wanted to get rid of, as well as some individuals that
I didn't
appeared to
realize
be-
that. Kind of like the Mariel boat lift, the boat lift
Yeah.
of Cuba. It's funny you say that don't watch TV. Murray Richmond, a defense attorney, I'm sure you know Murray from
Yes,
your
I do.
travels. A friend of mine, he always tells people, please don't watch Law and Order. It's not like that.
no,
So he says that. We're talking with incumbent district attorney Anthony Scarpino here on Radio Westchester, and we're glad to have him with us. So now, how long did you stay in the FBI?
A little over 4 years.
And what did you do next?
Well, then I took a brief job, a 2-year stay at Bankers Trust Company. It was an international bank working in their security division.
My mom had an account there, Bankers
It was
Trust.
a
I
wonderful
remember.
bank
Yeah.
when I was there. I had nothing to do with their demise.
With their no, of course.
and then I had the opportunity to become a city judge in my hometown, the city of Mount Vernon.
Right.
I was appointed by Tom Sharp, who was the mayor, and I spent several years as a city judge in Mount Vernon. I was elected in '86. I was appointed in '84 and for 2 years as an associate judge. And that started a 30-plus year career as a trial judge. So I went from city court. In '88, I ran for Westchester County Court.
Right.
And after I was elected, then in '93, I was elected to New York State Supreme Court, which covers 5 counties. Then in 2000, I was elected surrogate, and that had a 10-year term, and then I was reelected in 2010. And after 5 or 6 years, I decided to take a break from the judiciary after 30 plus years, went into private practice for a short period of time, and then we had this unanticipated opening, which brought me back to public service. Public service was my love, my first love. Law enforcement was really my first love, and this was an opportunity to come back to it. And I wanted very much to try to do that, and it's been very fulfilling. I've been here 3 years. It's been. Some people seem to think that maybe I've been here a lot longer, but it's a brief stay, 3 years, and now I'm running.
Brief stay, yeah.
And so whenever you come in, you try to build on your predecessors, and do more, and that's what I've tried to do.
Do you like the job?
Yes, I mean, I do like the job. Of course, I love the job, but it is a very interesting time to be involved as a
Very much so.
prosecutor with all of the new criminal justice reform that's coming in, and the pressures that are being put on the offices to try to accomplish all that is being asked of us with insufficient funding. So it is an interesting time.
Interesting you say that. I read that the other day. I've had defense attorneys on, some of whom I'm sure you've run into in your time, and they applauded, for example, the new discovery rule that required prosecutors to share what they found, or the police, with their clients, I guess within 15 days.
Correct.
But now it's come out that there's not enough funding to accomplish that. How do we bridge that gap?
Well, the legislature that passed it, when they didn't provide any funding.
They didn't provide any funding,
and so
yeah.
then that meant that the funding to try to accomplish all that has to be done is being placed on the shoulders of county government. And it's not just district attorneys' offices. If you think about it, all the local municipalities too.
Mm-hmm.
Every police department now has to have the technology to be able to accomplish providing this information to the DA's office. We have over 40 law enforcement agencies that are trying to do it. Some are more up-to-date and larger police departments like Yonkers, but then we have smaller police departments that don't have the technology. And so the local communities have to try to support their police departments with additional personnel, additional technology. At the county level, that is going to have impact on the county police, the labs, probation, and of course our office too. It's having a major impact.
When you say have impact, are we in a situation where people who would otherwise be prosecuted are going to have to be let go, or decision not to prosecute them because the funding isn't there?
Well, we're not at that point yet, but I have to.
It's a risk.
Of course, it's always a risk because we prosecute 27 to 30,000 cases a year. The bulk of the cases are misdemeanors. And when the legislation came out, it doesn't apply just to the felonies. If we have 2,500 felonies, this would not be a major issue for us to accomplish. But it applies to misdemeanors. It applies to vehicle and traffic cases, matters that we never had to provide this substantial amount of information. And now with the new world that we're in, what has to be turned over is incredible amount of information. Every dash cam from a police officer, every body cam, every video in the community of any incident that's occurred, besides all of the other information that they have, 911 calls, lab reports, accident reconstruction. The nature of the information that has to be turned over in 15 days, it doesn't mean that I have 15 days to do it, because the police department has to first put it together and get it to us. So we really have even fewer amounts of time.
Mr. DA, and you want this job back. You want to hold on to this job. We're talking with District Attorney Anthony Scarpino. It's quite a handful. Now, the other law that's meeting, and full disclosure, I believe in judicial discretion. Now, as someone who has been a judge 30 plus years and now is the district attorney, do you think that there's any chance that they'll modify this bail law, which is receiving a lot of criticism? Now, I realize, and I remember even interviewing you earlier, You were always concerned about people being held too long and things of that nature. It was always a concern of yours. But to go to the other extreme seems problematic, at least for we in the general public. What say you?
Well, let's remember first, why this law first came into effect. It was generally felt it was fundamentally unjust for men and women that are living in poverty and are accused of nonviolent crimes to await trial simply because they couldn't afford bail. That was the main concern.
Of course.
And most of the problems were occurring in New York City. Terrible situations were occurring. People were waiting for trials on misdemeanors for 3 years, and
Terrible.
and terrible incidents, occurred. And so that wasn't necessarily the case in Westchester. You never had to wait for a trial. Our jail has not been at 120% capacity. It's very low. But when I first came in, I was supportive of this. To the extent that I made a determination that our office would not be seeking bail on any nonviolent crime, where at the end of the case, we would not be seeking jail time. I felt it was unfair for a person to be charged with a nonviolent crime, where at the end of the case, it was going to be probation or something else, and that they wait in jail for that determination. So I made that decision ahead of the legislation, because you never knew when it was going to come. Now we have new legislation. The new legislation provides a certain list of cases in which the district attorney is allowed to ask for bail, and a judge is allowed to set it. But it also includes a large number of charges that there's no discretion. We can't ask for it, and a judge can't set it. At this point in time, there are, just like there are always sad stories that brought the law in, now we're hearing of incidents, and there can be, it's historic legislation. There's nothing has been anything like this. It's turned our world of bail up completely inside out and upside down. And so there are some potential unintended consequences. I think the legislature, they are not tone deaf. They are listening to it. Their goal, like any legislation, is to, I believe, to make the legislation better, because it's only been in effect for 30 days.
I understand, and one would want to tweak. I know we saw that the leader, Mr. Heastie, Assemblyman Heastie, is not inclined to even look at it, but others are. So
I can't speak for him, whether that's so or not. I do know in my conversations with, we have some very influential members of the legislature. We have Andrew Stewart Cousins. We have Jamal Bailey, very much involved in this.
Right here in town.
And they are not tone deaf. They are listening to everybody in regards to it. The advocates who want it to stay the way it is. There are advocates that are pushing. There's some that are pushing for a complete, throw it out. That's not where how I see it. I think that it's something that can be made even better. With I don't like the term tweaking, but I'd like to see some additional charges included.
I use that word because I don't know any better, Mr.
Well,
District
but
Attorney.
we had success in New Jersey with a program, and many of the advocates point to the success in New Jersey. But the New Jersey legislation was far more expansive than our legislation. It provided 3 years for institution of it, a tremendous amount of funding for programs that allowed better monitoring when people are released without bail. But it also provided for some judicial discretion. So I think that there are a lot of people are looking closer at the successes in New Jersey, and some of the modifications may include something that we see in New Jersey. But I think it's a work in progress.
Anthony Scarpino, our guest. I changed your name there for a second, the incumbent district attorney. You deserve a moment to talk about what you have accomplished while you're in office. What are the things at this point you're most proud of? And then let's talk about where you want to take the district attorney's office.
Well, from the time I took office, we've had a tremendous amount of success in the reduction of violent crimes. And I don't claim complete responsibility for it. The law enforcement's been involved. But we've had, we've had a major drop in homicides, 33%. Robberies have gone down by 51%. Overall, 22 or 20%, overall in crimes. Reduction in rape was down by 23.5%. Burglaries down by almost 57%. So these are, great successes for us. It makes Westchester, the safest county in the state, as far as I'm concerned. It's a wonderful place to live, a wonderful place to raise your children, and safety is always a concern for the people that live in Westchester. They want to feel safe in their community, and we've had success in that regard, and that's positive. So I'm very proud of that. but we've also tried to be aggressive and progressive at the same time. I've tried to focus on violent criminals because there are no bad locations to live in Westchester. There are small segments of communities that are creating the violent crimes. And so I created a gang, gun, and narcotics group.
How's that working out?
It's tremendously. We've had tremendous success with that. In the last 3 years, we've had over 60 indictments. We've prosecuted these individuals that are involved in gangs and they're involved in narcotics and access to weapons. And that's a dangerous cocktail when you put those three together. They're fighting among themselves for territory. They're injuring local people accidentally, but in their firearms exchanges. We've had some very sad stories. They're holding certain communities hostage. And so by taking those individuals out of the community, we've watched this precipitous drop in crime. In Yonkers, a year ago, they released that their homicide rate went down. They had 1 in that year. It's unheard of. And that was because of the rounding up of this whole group of individuals that were operating out of Yonkers. And when you pull them out of the community, you watch the violent crimes drop.
Yes.
And so, you always have limited resources to do all the things you have to do. And I've tried to focus on the most violent cases, while I've tried to shift away from, I made a determination not to prosecute possession of small amounts for personal use of marijuana, less than 2 ounces. And I felt that was an offense that carried a B misdemeanor. It was having a major impact on segments of the community. If you had that B misdemeanor, you couldn't get into college. You weren't going to get college loans. You'd have housing problems. You couldn't get into the military. And, I sort of read the tea leaves of what was sort of going on. The legislature eventually changed that law, but I was ahead of the curve in that regard because, to me, I wanted to focus more of our resources on the more violent crimes, and that was one way that I felt we could do it.
Apropos of that, how much discretion, and you'll pardon my ignorance here, please, how much discretion does a district attorney's office have in deciding what to prosecute, what not, what to investigate, and so forth?
Well,
or is that the job?
Well, that's the job. There's a tremendous amount of discretion in that regard. And it's something that when you decide to investigate and you decide to prosecute, you have to continually evaluate it. You have a certain thought of an incident in the beginning. As the case starts to build and you continue to look at it, things can change. Sometimes it gets stronger and stronger. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's the first complaint that comes in and you're investigating, and as time goes on, you realize that it's not necessarily the way it first appeared. So you have a responsibility to seek justice as district attorney. That's justice for the people that are charged with the crime. That's justice for the victims of the crime. That's justice for the community. It's a much more complex job than a criminal defense attorney.
In fact, one of the things I've always been concerned about with the district attorney, and even now as you're being primaried, I've always interested when someone primaries or even runs from the other party, because I'm always looking to see, is this person that's running and or primarying yourself, such as the case of Mimi Rocha now, a district attorney doesn't legislate. That's not their job. But they do decide what cases to follow. How much does that get in the way, if at all, of the fact that the legislator decides what's crime and what's not? How much does that affect what you do?
Well, when a district attorney has to be careful and not in deciding unilaterally not to prosecute a crime that is still on the books. Okay, it was a step that I determined to do in the marijuana case, but it would be something that you would have to look very closely at in regards to your personal opinion in it. I mean, as I said, I read the tea leaves. I read them right. Yes. Within a year or so, the legislature agreed completely with what I had decided to do. But it was also a job that had to do with focusing resources.
I was going to say, it seems to me that when you've got X amount of resources, you have to decide which fish to fry and not. So that makes perfect sense to we lay people.
Yeah, every manager has to do that. Life is always about choices.
Now, I remember when you ran the last time, and I was always impressed with your answer. I had asked you about people who were prosecuted and who turned out not to be fair, and or people who needed exculpatory help, or people who were convicted erroneously, and you were going to look into that. Have you? What are you doing in that regard?
Well, I guess you're talking about conviction review.
Yes, sir.
And there's always been a conviction review protocol in the DA's office under Janine Pirro, under Judge DiFiore. When I came into the office, I decided to expand that protocol because when the new look, when you try to do these, you want to make sure that the people that are reviewing the cases were not involved in the initial prosecution. You want an independent view. And so I brought in a new first deputy. His name is Victor Rolls, who is head of professional responsibility in the Bronx. And he is not involved in the prosecution of these cases, and he is now the conviction integrity officer. So it's another layer. He reviews the cases, and then he sets up a committee to review these convictions on depending upon the nature of the allegation. We don't, in New York City, they've had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these types of conviction reviews, and we hear these terrible stories. In Westchester, we've only had a handful of them. So we continue to do it. It's very important.
It is very important.
We've had, people make the complaints that they've, they make their applications and we review them, and that's the job. It's important. It's not just to convict people that are guilty.
Well,
but
that's always the fear. When we get phone calls from people, and even in my own work, of course, a prosecutor who has the goods feels that they need to convict, but people don't want to see this win at all costs mentality applied in criminal law because it's unfair. To the
that's the worst attitude.
Yes.
Because if you have a win at all cost attitude, it will direct you to do major problems. We had the terrible case down in North Carolina, if you remember the Duke case,
Yes.
Where that prosecutor actually was trying the case, and he got so involved in the case that he failed. As he saw the case falling apart, he refused to acknowledge it, and he continued to prosecute.
Doubled down, yeah.
And what he ended up being disbarred. He ended up being prosecuted. He ended up, I believe, going to jail because he was so involved in it. It's one of the reasons why, as district attorney in a larger office, you don't see the district attorneys trying these cases.
Well, you
should have others, because you always have to have that separation.
Sure, yeah. My guest is the current district attorney, Anthony Scarpino. He's running for re-election come November. He has the endorsement of his party. He's running against Mimi Rica, who will be, I don't know how this is going to work if she runs as an independent, but I know she continues to run.
No, she'll be running, in a primary.
Well, she'll still be running in the primary. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
But she did not get the endorsement at the convention, though.
No, she did not get the endorsement, but that provides, still anyone who doesn't get an endorsement has the ability to collect signatures and be on the ballot and be
I just
voted
need
by
to
the
remind
general
people,
public.
that's in June this year.
Yes,
it has been moved up, folks, so you want to get out there and vote. Now, one of the things, and this is a personal preference, I can't take sides in this and need to interview both of you, but one thing that I open disclosure that I've always liked about your era, if you will, is you don't appear to be someone who's doing this for the next job. This is that's not. Is that a fair statement?
Oh, absolutely. This is my job. This has been the most the crowning part, I think, of my career. And I'm on the back nine of my career. I'm not looking for a TV show or anything else. I can't go to another court. To me, this is it. I will work in this position until it's time for me to retire health-wise or by way of the vote of the people.
Now, what do you think is the virtue of that, of not being overly ambitious for the next job?
It all depends upon the personality of the individuals. I'm not talking about anyone that's involved in this right now. Just talking in general. If you are focusing on another job, it can always have impact on your decisions that you make. Just like I hate to be involved in a campaign, because it's the perfect world is when a prosecutor does not have to consider any ramifications of any decision they make politically. You can't help it. When people are running, they always focus on, what's the political impact of it. For a prosecutor, that's the worst thing to do. And so we're human beings. We see that, but for me, it's, okay, but you have to do your job. You have to do what's right. And, it's not. I'm not the type of person who comes into the office at 9 and says, "Get me on Channel 2 News," because I want to push
Well, I'm
for
certainly
something.
glad you came here, though, to Radio Westchester. Were you surprised that you were primaried?
No, I wasn't surprised. Miss Roca actually, when I was running last time, appeared in front of the Democratic Committee, asked for what they call a Wilson Pakula. That would be authority, permission from the party to run against whoever they designated. You need a Wilson Pakula if you're not a registered Democrat.
Sounds like a disease, but I guess it's a
It
legal
does.
term.
I guess.
I have Rosenberg-Cooler. And
Call the doctor. So I know I had a chance to meet her for the first time there and listen to her talk, but she was not a registered Democrat at that time, and so
was she an independent or Republican?
I think she was what we might call a blank.
Okay.
When you say independent, you have to be careful because there is an independence
No,
party.
I would not brand anyone with that party.
Yeah.
At this point.
So, but that has now changed. She is a registered Democrat, so she appeared at the convention, and she was not successful. And now she can, use the people that are supporting her to help collect petitions and signatures, and then appear on a primary ballot, which will be in June. So, you always look, in your rearview mirror and see what's out there. I'm not surprised,
Okay. Do you have you at least this early on identified any differences between the two, or the things that she has said she'd do differently? For example, is there any position that you've taken or choices that you've made that she's challenged in any way that you know?
Well, I think that we have, she seems to suggest that she would have a different format for the Conviction Integrity Bureau than I have. I think that we've had the pleasure of appearing in front of 25 different Democratic committees or so, prior to the convention. So I've had a chance to.
Got to do all that.
I had a chance to.
I don't know why you all do this, but go ahead, sir.
I had a chance to hear her, and she talks about doing more in certain areas. She's very very much focused on Donald Trump and what he is involved in, we are all. In the Democratic Party in agreement in that regard. I think that I think we are on the main issues. We might be relatively close on these issues. It's hard to say. We don't get a chance in your 5 minutes to really flush out.
Of course not.
As an existing district attorney, I have a record to discuss. As a person who wants to do something, they come up and they can suggest ideas, and this is what they'd like to do, and that they can do more. But for the DA themselves, it's not just a suggestion. You have to actually build these things. And so, I don't think that there are huge differences, but I'm sure she would disagree with that.
Mr. District Attorney, this is a good opportunity to ask you, where do you want to take the office now? You've been in there. You will have been there 4 years. You've already shared with us some of the things that have improved on your watch. There are probably things you'd like to do better. There are probably things you'd like to do anew. There are probably things you'd like to emphasize.
Right.
Tell us about the future under your management.
I think it's critical for us to try to continue to focus on diversion programs, to try to keep people that are nonviolent outside the criminal justice system, if we can, get them the mental health help they need outside the criminal justice system, get them the drug rehabilitation outside the the criminal justice system. Creating these diversion programs will then reduce the strain on the criminal justice system. The number of cases that are coming in, the number of cases in which we have to provide discovery, etc. So diversion programs are very important. They have to come from the assistance financially to create them. You need an infrastructure, and that's county, state. But to me, we're very much interested in trying to assist and participate in these diversion programs. I still feel it's important to focus on the violent criminals, because that is what will make continue to make Westchester a safer and more secure community. You can't back away. You can't declare victory and move on in this, because it's a continuing
Well, it's
battle.
a continuum, sir.
So that's something that we will try to do. I'd like to increase our intelligence gathering capabilities. We have the Westchester Intelligence Center, and it does a great job. but it's capable of increasing its platforms of gathering information. If we could connect with the New York State Department of Criminal Justice, they have a different style. It's called a Crime Analysis Center. I'd like to see us move that way from the local intelligence center to a more regional intelligence center, because that would be very helpful in our investigations of pattern crimes, of hate crimes. Right now, I mean, we focus on the media that's out there, local, state, national, international, trying to identify hate crimes, try to identify groups that are involved in pattern crimes, burglary, auto thefts, gang activity, and things of that nature. I'd like to try to increase our footprint in that regard, but that is continuing work with the county. They'd have to approve that. So I think that's an important thing for us to try to do. We've had recent expansion in the law in regards to human trafficking. It's generally been a federal crime that we would rely on, because much of the trafficking does occur outside of our jurisdiction. It could start here, but they could have New York City, New Jersey, some other connection. And our legislation was weak. It was very hard for us to prosecute those cases, so we deferred most of those cases and worked closely with our federal partners. But recently, within the last year, there's been new legislation that has given our law more teeth. And so we have tried to expand our capabilities in that area by hiring two individuals that have expertise in that area.
You know what's a bit of a surprise is I've been covering the news, and maybe it's just me in the last 15 years. I suppose it's always been there, but is it because the law is better, there's more work being done, or have we always had this problem with human trafficking? It seems like I'm doing more and more stories about it.
No, human trafficking has been around from the beginning of time.
Wow. Well, I really, but so has it gotten any worse, or do you think we're just dealing with it more
I
effectively?
think we're doing a better job in dealing with it and exposing it. It's something that is important for us to do, and the federal authorities have worked on it, and we've tried to work with them in regards to it. But it's something that is important for us to try to focus on. It is. But they're very hard cases state-wise originally to prosecute, because the victims many times did not want to cooperate. And that was part of the problem. But the federal statute provided them with other avenues for prosecuting these cases. And they also had a much more substantial sentencing structure in the federal system. So see, it's not so unusual for us as local prosecutors, and when we deal with the U.S. Attorney's Office and our counterparts in the FBI, to take a look at the quality of your case and what you can get. We had a very sad case involved in Mount Vernon, the Shamoya McKenzie shooting, where she was, an innocent bystander. That case started as a homicide with us, but in our conversations with our federal, partners, we were able to provide that incident as an anchor for an actual RICO violation, racketeering violation, which carried broader opportunities to go after the entire gang rather than just the person who did the shooting. And so, we have to share those resources too.
This is for my own edification, but what I've always found interesting for the work that you do and others who do what you do is a so-called hate crime. When that line is crossed, it has to be very difficult, because a crime is a crime is a crime on one hand, and then when it's a hate crime, there may be more penalties. It may be in a different, if you will, maybe a federal crime as opposed to not. And I think it's not in your district, of course, but over, of course, in Rockland, you have the issue of a man who's clearly mentally ill. And does that become a hate crime? Of course, that's not your decision to make, but these have to be difficult cases to prosecute in terms of what you will prosecute for.
Well, yeah, first of all, if you have a designated hate crime, it can elevate an assault, a misdemeanor, to a felony.
Right.
It can, a felony up a notch from like a D, an E felony to a D, or a C to a B. So there are enhanced penalties if you can do it.
And you get increased pressure from the media and from the public.
But the issue when it comes in under New York law for hate crimes is that you have to demonstrate that the reason for the incident, the reason for the attack or whatever they did, was based upon the individual or the group being part of a designated protected
Gotcha.
group, whether they're religious, sexual orientation, whatever it may be. And so you do have incidents where individuals say all sorts of terrible things, but it's really coming out of a dispute over a parking space or a dispute over something else going
Right,
on.
and then you have to make that
And so
distinction.
you have to decide, is just because they said these terrible things, was that the reason why they had the fight with the individual? And so, that is something that we have to look closely at and make those determinations. That there are certain types of cases, though, where you don't have to do that in regards to if you, in a public place, you post a SWAT sticker, you burn a cross, you display some sort of a noose. These under the law are automatically considered
Right.
hate crimes, and we can do it. Now in Rockland, I've watched the case from a distance. I'm no expert in regards to it. He's charged with a homicides.
Right.
What they're charged with there. Those are crimes, very serious crimes,
Very
statewide.
serious in any way.
But on the federal side, I thought when I read it, it seemed to be the hate crime had to do with interfering with a religious service or something
Right.
of that nature.
Right.
We don't have that type of charge,
see.
and that's how they've been able to use the hate crime there on the federal side.
Very interesting.
So we'll see how that does play out.
We're going to take a little break, and I want you to do a little bit of homework in your sizable brain. When we come back, okay, we want to put the listener in the booth in June. And then if you get through that, again in November, why you should be reelected to that position. You'll make your case. When we come back, we're with the District Attorney, Anthony Scarpino, here on Radio Westchester Mornings with Bob Marrone. We, of course, need to share, as he watches me press all my buttons, we need to share the weather with you once again. It's 41 now, going to get up to 52 today. You see the rain, you feel the rain. It'll continue like this off and on most of the day. Heavy later on, maybe a sprinkle of snow, but don't worry about it because it's going to get up to 55 today. Now, now get this, around 7 o'clock, the number 55 will stay with you because we'll have wind gusts up to that level. So you may want to be careful if you left some of those Christmas decorations or lawn furniture out there for whatever reasons. But then tonight, the temperature will crash down to about 26. It'll be dry, believe it or not, but again, cold. Tomorrow, partly sunny, breezy with highs around 37 degrees. A chance for an afternoon flurry, wind out of the west, 10 to 20 miles an hour. And on Sunday, mostly cloudy, scattered rain or snow showers. And the weather's brought to you exclusively by United Hebrew of New Rochelle. Voted one of America's rehabilitation and senior care campuses, and it's right here in New Rochelle. The bottom of the hour is supported by Aging Issues Management, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. We will be back with the District Attorney in a moment. And we have returned as we come up on 9:39. This is Mornings with Bob Marrone. I am he. This is Radio Westchester, the radio station at the train station. And we are concluding our time with the interview here with he's running for re-election. He will be in the June primary. Please get out and vote, folks. He's running against, I think the only challenger right now is Mimi Roca, whom we will be talking with probably sometime next week. And we put it to him before we went to break, and we will remind him again as we welcome him back. Welcome back, Mr. District Attorney. I'm in the booth in June. I'm ready to vote for a Democrat to run, be our candidate in the November election. Why should listeners pull the lever for you or fill out the card, whatever the case may be?
Well, having been involved in public service all these years, I think people of Westchester hopefully have an understanding of who I am and the type of person that I've been and the work that I've done in all the different jobs. And the 3 years that I've been in the office, have a record that I've run on. It's been as we all the things we've been discussing, focusing on violent crimes, trying to not criminalize poverty, trying to treat people fairly, and do the right job. And it's one thing for someone to say, I will do this, I will do that. Anybody can say, I can do better. I think when you are a person who's been in office, you have to evaluate the job that they've done and see what you feel about that individual. Are you satisfied with what they've done? Do you feel they're going in the right direction? We can always continue to build on everything that we have done up to this point in time. And it's my hope to continue to do that and follow that progress that we've made. So I think that people in the community, in both the legal community and throughout, I've been on the ballot 7 times during my career.
7 times?
Yeah. And they've had a chance to get to know you, to see the job you've done in all the jobs and areas you've done. I've never disappointed them. And I feel, that I've done, it's my life has been in public service, and it's something that I know, of course, I would want to continue to do. And if they are happy with my performance and the integrity of what I've done and the decisions that I've made, I would hope they would consider that. Because when you're running against someone that I don't know that much about, and they can self-define themselves. But anyone can define themselves when you don't have this record to really review. I have my record, and that is what that's what I am. Whether it was as a city court judge or Supreme Court judge or surrogate or an FBI agent, people have known me, and I think hopefully they feel that I'm the type of person that should have this job. A person who's focusing purely on doing the job, whose goal is in their career is to do what's right, and that has no intention of looking for something else.
Well, thank you for coming in. Now, we'd like to bring you back. We also will invite you for a debate. I don't know if you've been invited to any debates yet, but if we have
There's
one here.
been some discussions on it. Of course, I think it's until we're on the ballot. I think it's that we.
So the signatures have to be. Well,
Yeah.
I will be reaching out for you for that. Do you have any final words before we let you get back to work?
No, it's wonderful to see you again.
It's always
And
good
it's
to see you,
wonderful to
Mr.
be,
D.
have a chance to talk about the good work of the men and women in our office. They work very, very hard.
They do the crazy hours and stuff. Huh?
Right now, they're working around the clock, and it's not an easy task with the new discovery reform. But we have wonderful people, wonderful trial attorneys, wonderful investigators, wonderful support personnel. I'm very proud of the people that work for me. And any successes we've had, of course, they are part and parcel of it.
Well, I want to thank you very much for making the time. I know you're a very busy man, and thanks for participating in the program today. Thank you very much, Mr. District Attorney Anthony Scarpino. Folks, get out in June and vote, okay? It's your city. It's your county. It's your time to be heard. So get out and vote in June, and then no matter who wins, get out and vote again in November. I'm Bob Marrone for Jake Schaefer, Vince Russo, Andy Spano, Steve Callis. Al Tarantino couldn't make it today. Dr. Victor Sternberg, and of course, Dr. Anthony Scarpino. We want to thank our sponsors today. United Hebrew, a top-rated campus of senior care. Visit uhdc.com. Aging Issues Management and their partners, Aging Issues Radio, the law firm of Payne & Kahn, Dominic's Fine Cigars, and Plug-in Virtual Reality. Now, with all the construction going on here at the train station, I think we'll be live Monday morning, but we will keep you informed via Facebook. Thank you so much for listening, everyone, and we'll see you Monday morning.